Thank you all for coming. My name is Peter Stanton. I'm with the Worcester Business Journal. And while this is our 25th year in business at the WBJ, this will be our 8th annual Massachusetts Energy Summit. I want to now move to thanking our sponsors, our presenting sponsor, National Grid, our corporate sponsor, Select, both of whom are exhibitors out in the hallway, and supporting sponsors, Conover and Company, Mass CEC, and World Energy, and all of our exhibitors and panelists. And I just want to say that I'm referring to this as a Worcester Business Journal event. Frankly, this has been a Worcester Business Journal National Grid event since it began, and they have been a terrific partner in helping us come up with the kind of programming that's helpful to business folks as you're looking at ways to save money and become more efficient. And just as their company has done a tremendous amount in this community, they've helped us just as much in putting together what we feel is a really solid program for many years. And so I'd like to invite Ed White, the VP of Customer and Business Strategy at National Grid, to come up for a few comments. Ed.
All right, good morning, everyone. So as Peter was saying, and thank you, Peter, for your leadership with this summit. My name's Ed White. I'm the Vice President of Customer Strategy and Environmental for National Grid. We are excited to be here, proud sponsors of this summit. I've been up here on this podium before. I participated as a panelist and couldn't be happier with all the work that we've had going on here in the city. I know it's a Massachusetts summit and you have a wonderful list of great speakers. I want to just give a quick update and a quick shout out for all the work that we've been doing here in the city of Worcester. And for those of you that have not visited our Sustainability Hub on 912 Main Street, please reach out and go check it out. We've been doing our Smart Energy Solutions program here in Worcester for the last couple years. The last year we've spent installing devices, getting communications out to customers, and we've really seen a transformative interaction with our customers for those that are participating. So while today's event is really a great agenda associated with Massachusetts as a whole, and we've got a lot of municipal speakers and a lot of folks looking at Massachusetts and the region, I do want to really focus on Massachusetts, on Worcester, and all the great work that's been happening here in the city. And one thing that I want to do is shout out to a lot of the National Grid representatives here and the Clark University and WPI folks that have really made it happen, because it's not just National Grid and the universities, it's the community as a whole. And the city of Worcester has been a great partner, as will be evident by the award later on today. I don't want to steal Marcy's thunder, so that's why I'm going to focus on Worcester. She'll talk much more broadly. But if you think about the Sustainability Hub, which I just mentioned, we've had over 3,000 visitors to that hub. It's just about a year old. So we're averaging about, a lot of foot traffic, a lot of schools. Over the summer, we had a lot of kids. And I was speaking to someone in the hallway earlier today. I think about, and Peter, we can't help with healthcare as much as I'd love to. But if I think about the cool jobs, and last week we had Energy Week with a lot of students, a lot of high school students come visit our facilities. If I think about the next couple years, you're going to have not only 8 years, but 18 years of talking about energy, because I think energy is where it's going to be. It's really the cool space. And whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, an engineer, a sociologist, it doesn't matter. You all can participate in the energy space, and that's what we're learning firsthand in Worcester with our pilot. So very excited with the progress we've made. Hopefully we'll be back next year to tell you what a whiz-bang success it's been. And I just want to thank the Worcester Business Journal and all of the participating sponsors and everyone for really pulling this together, because it's a great venue to come talk about energy, and you've got an awesome lineup. So thank you for having us, and we're looking forward to next year. Thanks.
Okay, it is my pleasure to be introducing our keynote speaker. Good morning. Maeve Vallely Bartlett has over 26 years of experience developing and implementing environmental law and policy in both the administrative and legislative arenas within federal and state government. Her previous positions include, here's a nice list, being Director of the MEPA Office, Assistant Secretary for Transportation and Planning, Assistant General Manager for Environmental Compliance at the MBTA, and General Counsel at the EEA. She has also served as a Senior Enforcement Counsel at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and was the Undersecretary of the Environment until her appointment as the Secretary of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs in June of this year. So we're lucky enough to have Secretary Bartlett speak to us at the height of her power, and that I think happens 100 days. Isn't it 100 days into office where you still, everything you've done has been perfect? And sort of, I think after that, people, maybe there's a shadow to your work, but right now, it's just everything is pure sunshine. So anyways, we are very pleased to have the Secretary of the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, Maeve Vallely Bartlett. Maeve, welcome up.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Peter. Seeing as I had the 100 days of sunshine and now I have roughly 80 days, I don't think it can get too shadowy, but let's hope. Thank you for having me here today at the 2014 Annual Massachusetts Energy Summit. It is so great to be in a room like this with so many dedicated professionals as we all run about in our busy days and we've got this task and that task and running to this meeting or have to deliver this report. It's really great to take a minute and get together and have everyone share ideas and share lessons learned. It's really, really valuable for all of us. So thank you very much, and thank you to the Worcester Business Journal for hosting this great event. We're here today to bring together leaders of the Massachusetts businesses, educational institutions, and municipalities to discuss best practices and the latest energy market news. The Patrick administration has worked aggressively over the last 7 years to invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy in order to secure our energy future. We've made tremendous progress with legislation and policies that have been successful both for our environment and for our economy. From the perspective of our environment and energy security, we have reduced our reliance on fossil fuels that send our energy dollars out of state and out of the country. By investing in all cost-effective energy efficiency measures throughout government and incentivizing business and residents to do the same, we have flattened the Commonwealth's energy demand. These policies have earned us the #1 ranking in the United States for 3 years running. That's the #1 ranking in energy efficiency throughout the United States. I think we're justifiably proud of that. But at the same time, we have invested in homegrown renewable energy, harnessing the energy resources Massachusetts does have, the sun and the wind, growing our wind and solar capacity from a mere 6 megawatts in 2007, when Governor Patrick took office, to more than 750 megawatts today. To further rein in costs, the administration has engaged the other New England states, who are critical partners in the effort to resolving the regional energy issues. This summer, we advocated for a bill to help ease the constraints and provide up to 30% of the Massachusetts energy load with clean energy resources, and that would include large hydro and wind. We continue to push for similar legislation. It's that type of foresight that makes us national leaders in preparing and meeting the challenge of climate change. We've set the most ambitious greenhouse goal emissions in the nation, aiming to reduce emissions by 25% below 1990 baseline levels in 2020 and by 80% below those 1990 levels by 2050. It is absolutely clear that reducing emissions is necessary if we want future generations to have the chance to fight the very real threats of climate change. Yet we know that climate change is no longer just an issue for future generations. Its impacts are being felt today through heat waves, coastal flooding, intense precipitation, and more extreme storms. And that is why we are not just addressing climate change through reducing our greenhouse gas emissions for the long term, but we're also working to build resilient communities throughout the Commonwealth. In January, Governor Patrick announced a plan to coordinate climate preparedness and targeted $50 million to support our communities who are grappling with these real issues. Of that investment, nearly $10 million will help our coastlines prepare, and $40 million will be allocated to protect facilities during power outages by utilizing clean energy in times of disaster. This helps to ensure that hospitals, community centers, and other critical areas have the power to keep our neighborhoods functioning when we need it the most. This hasn't just made sense from an environmental and climate change perspective. These investments and policies also have been good for our state's economy. We have made Massachusetts, all of us, with all of your help, we have made Massachusetts a hub for the clean tech sector, tapping into our intellectual capital, particularly those fostered by our nation-leading educational institutions, and encouraging businesses to innovate and create right here in the Commonwealth. Governor Patrick's support of the clean tech industry has led to double-digit job growth 4 years running, and now employs nearly 90,000 workers throughout Massachusetts. We are poised to cross the 100,000 number employee by the end of the year, and we continue with double-digit growth next year. Together, we are making real progress in the Commonwealth. We're taking the first crucial steps toward leaving a cleaner and more secure energy future for the next generation. Speaking of the next generation, I just want to share a quick story with you. Just this past month, we had a clean energy jobs event at a local school in Boston. At this school, it's a charter school, students focus on sustainability so that they are prepared to work in the clean energy future economy. At this event, a young teenage student who was kicking off the speaking program told the crowd, and the crowd did include Governor Patrick, that he appreciated all the work that we were doing in the Commonwealth, and he was thrilled with the clean energy economy. But he told us he had no intention of working for us. He had every intention of being our boss someday. It was great. As we go into today, I ask you to keep this young man in mind and all of his peers and everyone who's interested in the younger generation who's interested in clean energy and having a strong and secure economic future as well as an environmental future. What's good for them economically to someday be our bosses in an even more robust clean energy economy is also extremely necessary for them environmentally as they try to lead a world facing global impacts of climate change. They are counting on all of us. Let's work together so we don't let them down. Thank you very much. Okay.
Governor has done and the state has done around clean energy is certainly impressive, but one of the most pressing problems that we face in the Commonwealth and throughout ISO is the gas pipeline constraint. Could you speak to that issue and what the governor is doing, what the administration is doing about that, and what he's going to leave when he leaves office, in November, in terms of expanding the ability to get gas into this region.
Sure. There's no question that we are severely constrained in our gas, and we need that, and that is one of the reasons why we're going to see these energy spikes this winter. The governor, along with all of the NESCO states, had prepared a plan that would place a tariff on new electricity lines, and that money was going to go regionally to do an RFP for gas. There's also some private entities that are proposing natural gas infrastructure, as I'm sure you are all well aware. When the Clean Energy Resource Bill didn't pass in the legislature, and we were facing a scenario where we could not get the 2,400 megawatts of clean energy, Governor Patrick, who had been highly involved in the discussions both around the bill and with the NESCO process, and one of the criticisms that we had received from the environmental community was that we were even looking at gas at all, and they kept pointing to a study. I don't want to get into the weeds on it. I have a tendency to do that, and I apologize. But that study had not had the correct baseline. It didn't take into account that Brayton Point was going offline, that Mount Tom was going offline, and probably most importantly for GHG impacts, that Vermont Yankee was going offline. So it became this swirling discussion, and at that point the governor turned to me and said, I want to do a gas study so that we know the actual needs that we have in Massachusetts. So right now we're undertaking that study, what would be the low demand scenario in Massachusetts for gas. Because while we want natural gas and we understand we need to have it as a bridge, we don't want to be subject to having such a large amount of natural gas infrastructure that squeezes out the clean energy resources that we want to get. It's a delicate balance, and we understand that. We're hoping that this report that will be delivered to us in the middle of December will inform both our last couple of weeks, but also will really inform the NESCO process moving forward as to figure out exactly how much gas we need in the region. So I know that was a long-winded answer, but that's what it is.
Wondering, as the demand for clean energy, so solar, wind, and hydro, keeps increasing, is there any concern that there won't be sufficient supply in the meantime? I know that some people say, oh, I want to support green, but if there's an issue, will I have an issue getting, if I change to a green source for my electricity, is there ever an issue in the near future that you see that there won't be enough supply? Do you think that we're keeping up with the increasing demand?
Well, I think that's part of the reason why we need to keep pushing on the Clean Energy Resource Bill, as well as the net metering bill, to make sure that our solar industry can keep growing. And a lot of these issues relate to how that energy comes in and where the transmission lines are and where the hookups. And that's why you need to do this in a balanced and understood manner and have a plan dedicated to it, because you don't want to go too far, too fast on one side and not have the infrastructure or the capacity to handle it. And you do want that delicate balance between the wind and the solar and the hydro and the natural gas. Yes?
Deb and Carrie.
Hi, Deb. How you doing?
Good. And I think I'm wearing my Princeton hat right now, small municipal town. It's been struggling with how to deal with more people wanting solar, but then worrying that they won't be able to. Oh, thanks. Okay, our situation in our town, I know some others are facing this, and I just didn't know if the state was thinking about how to help out the municipals that want to encourage green energy, but at the same time, not so much so fast that then there's some concern that they won't sell enough energy on their own to be able to pay their wholesale provider.
Right.
So you're probably up on this. So right now, Princeton's decided they really can't give anything but the retail rate to any
Right.
solar producer, and that's now discouraging people from wanting to put in solar.
Right.
So I understand both sides, and I just wondered, gee, do you see any way out?
Well, I think we did have the net metering bill in the legislature at the end of last year. That also didn't pass. And what happened was the legislature knew it was a very important issue, but it was just that crazy time at the end of the year. So they passed a cap increase, which has sort of allowed us to keep going with the projects that are in the pipeline. But there is a net metering task force that was set up by the legislature, and that task force should be examining all of these issues to, again, figure out how we can continue to grow the industry, but not have people in these funny situations where they can't move forward and get the benefits. You should contact DOER. And say that you're interested in finding out about, it's probably on the website too, but you could give a call and just talk to anyone, just say you want to talk about the task force. They'll probably give you to Dan Burgess. Okay? All right, Deb.
Solar, wind, and power, and all that. Thank you. Sorry. My question is more like, what is the Commonwealth doing in order to use these energies more efficiently? So like as in terms of cogeneration. So when you burn your natural gas, you can burn two sources. You can burn one source of fuel and get two sources of energy out of that, and thus using your energy more efficiently. So how is the Commonwealth like trying to implement programs which incentivize schools, universities, etc., in order to like UConn, which have and UNH, which has the methane like gas line and etc.
We just yesterday we did our Leading by Example Awards, which is the governor put into place an executive order that required all of the state facilities and universities and community colleges and authorities to take a look at their building facilities themselves. And with help from DOER and the Green Communities folks and a number of our other programs, looking at combined heat and power is actually one of the elements that we want a lot of people to look at, including UMass. UMass has a CHP plant, and they're actually working very hard to make that CHP plant even more efficient. Also, in the climate preparedness program that we have, that's $40 million for municipalities to develop projects that will make sure that they have those energy resilient areas in times of need. I know that Springfield is working very hard with the medical facility, and they're actually building a combined heat and power facility. So there are many different ways that we're looking at. We want all of these efficient and important energy initiatives to move forward, but not with one at the expense of the other. But we are very interested in combined heat and power, both in making the existing facilities that are out there more efficient if they're a bit older, and actually creating combined heat and power plants where it's appropriate.
First of all, congratulations on the way the state is going with the renewable effort. Where do you see the state going as far as energy storage? Seems to be the missing piece of the puzzle.
It is definitely a missing piece of the puzzle. I think that our Clean Energy Center, which is sort of our investment wing that deals the most with private industries, is the place where they will have the most effect in terms of developing the storage capacity. I know that they and our DOER are constantly in touch with the universities, both in Massachusetts and throughout the United States, because that is definitely a missing piece of the puzzle.
Okay, let's give the secretary a hand. Thank you very much. Thank you much. I'm going to hand you this book.
Okay.
As a special thank you to her visit to Central Massachusetts, we're going to give the secretary a Heart of the Commonwealth hardcover book with photography, and then, of course, one of those Worcester Business Journal 25th anniversary issues, so you can really learn about all the goings-on here in recent history in Central Mass. Thank you very much again.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you very much.
Welcome again. My name is Mark Murray. I'm the associate publisher of the Worcester Business Journal. And this morning I'm going to introduce our panelists on the municipal side of energy and also the moderator. So let us begin. To my left is John Odell. He's the Director of Energy and Assets in the City of Worcester. John has over 20 years of experience in the energy field. He is currently the city's Director of Energy and Asset Management and is responsible for managing many of the city's green initiatives, including the city's $36 million energy savings performance contract with Honeywell International, city energy supply contracts with utility and other energy providers, renewable installations, solar renewable energy credits, and net metering purchases, facility management and oversight for 6 of the city's most recognized buildings, including City Hall, Union Station, the library, and the DCU Center. Welcome, John. Next to John is Ed Anthus Washburn, Deputy Port Director, the City of New Bedford. And Ed serves as the Deputy Port Director, where he focuses on offshore wind development and business development, strategic planning, and environmental issues. Before arriving at the port, Ed worked in port infrastructure development at the Massachusetts Seaport Advisory Council in Fairhaven, Massachusetts. And Ed is also a research fellow at the Institute for Global Maritime Studies, a nonprofit research organization that grew out of the Tufts Fletcher School. Welcome, Ed. And next to Ed is Chris Mason. Chris is the Energy and Sustainability Officer from the City of Northampton. Chris is responsible for implementing projects and initiatives to achieve high levels of energy and resource sustainability, reduce climate change emissions, increase energy literacy, and shift to renewable energy sources in Northampton's municipal, commercial, and residential sectors. Welcome, Mr. Mason. And finally, we have Jennifer Hager to my far left. She's the Planning Director of the Town of Sutton. As Sutton's Planning Director for 14+ years and Sturbridge Town Planner for 8+ years, Ms. Hager has been instrumental in a myriad of programs and initiatives suited to historical towns. Her accomplishments range from historic preservation projects to interpretive park development, to oversight of numerous economic and housing development projects with an eye toward design. Welcome, Jennifer. And finally, the man I'm about to turn this over to is our moderator, Kevin Gould. He's the Executive Vice President of Conover and Gould Strategic Communications. And Kevin is a communications strategist with more than 20 years of experience in both corporate and agency environments. He's a trusted advisor to clients at global corporations, technology startups, NGOs, trade associations, and business coalitions. I'll turn it over to Kevin now. He can take the floor, and let's have a great discussion. Welcome, everyone. Take it easy.
Good morning. I'm excited to be moderating this panel this morning. We've had the opportunity over the years to work with several different municipalities, and we understand the challenges that they face in getting energy programs launched and managed. And what we've seen and what we see from this panel is that leadership at the municipal level can come from many different places, right? Each person on this panel is sitting here with a different title and a different job function within their municipality, but they're all here as leaders on energy initiatives in their communities. From smart grid to solar to wind to retrofitting and LEED certifying buildings, both public buildings and school buildings, municipalities are in many ways on the leading edge of energy efficiency and sustainability issues. In some cases, necessity has been the mother of invention in many places, particularly with regards to addressing storm-related power outages and managing emergency management issues, reducing energy costs both for the municipality and its residents, and also preserving the valuable natural resources that exist in different communities. We're fortunate today that we're going to hear from 4 municipalities of varying sizes from throughout the Commonwealth. Each one has a unique story to tell about their approach. We'll hear about a comprehensive energy management plan from one of the largest cities in the region. We'll hear about an offshore wind initiative from the South Coast. We're going to hear about an integrated approach to energy and sustainability initiatives designed to leverage municipal assets. And we're going to hear about a plan for green initiatives designed to reduce costs, save money, and address local environmental issues. So let's get right to our first panelist. We're going to start with John. John, would you like to start? No. Great. Okay, we're going to skip John. There's a cue clicker right here.
Hello. Yeah, awesome. All right, there we go. So what I wanted to just start talking about briefly is, in 10 minutes, sort of sum up what we've done over the last 6 years. No problem. But the focus is, as Kevin indicated, was to talk a little bit about our performance contract. That's sort of what got us moving forward on our energy efficiency projects in the city. We started with a $26 million project that touched 92 of our city and school facilities. It involved everything from renewables, solar on rooftop units. It had HVAC work, chillers and boiler replacement, and conversions from oil to gas. It included air insulation and air sealing work, and a sophisticated control system to tie in about 50 of our largest used buildings. So all that was sort of phase one, which I'm happy to say is we're actually finishing up. Hopefully, by the end of next month, we'll be completely closed. And all the work essentially is done. It's all the paperwork that remains, which is no small thing. And if anyone wants to talk to me later about paperwork, I'll be happy to. But I'm sure you're all familiar with that already. And then what we did on top of that is we are including a maintenance contract that's going to piggyback on this. What often gets overlooked is that when you do all these installations, they're great at first, but unless you maintain the equipment, you kind of end up right back where you started from, which is, especially in municipalities, as I'm sure all of you guys are familiar with, is that there's not a whole lot of extra money out there for equipment. And so maintenance, unfortunately, is an easy thing to cut when times are tough. And so what we're trying to do is build a program where the maintenance is taken care of for us initially, and then we can learn from how the process works so that we can start doing it in-house, and making sure that we don't lose the advantages that we've gained by the project in the first place. Anyway, phase one was so fun, we decided that we needed to move on to phase 2 and 3. And this is, back up real quick, just so you can get context. As Kevin alluded to, this is all done through our performance contract that we have right now with Honeywell. Performance contracting has lots of pluses, but also some significant shortcomings, I guess would be the best way to phrase it, that you have to be aware of if you want to get into it. The biggest plus side is it allows you access to capital that you wouldn't otherwise have, and that they guarantee the savings. And those savings are basically used to pay off the bond notes that come due that you use to get the project off the ground in the first place. So banks are pretty willing to lend you the money because, in fact, you can pay it off because they know you're having a revenue stream coming in those savings, those guaranteed savings. So anyway, phase 1, which, like I said, is coming to completion, moved on to phase 2 and 3, and those are both renewable programs, solar in particular. The solar is very cool because not only do we get solar on rooftops, 10 schools and the filtration plant, I should note, is a ground array. But we also, because we were able to do this, we recognize that you can't just put solar on any roof. You need roofs that aren't going to need to be replaced anytime soon. So, and of course, a lot of the roofs on our schools do need to be replaced. And they were at the end or actually after the warranty period expired. So we were able to, through this cost savings and through solar renewable energy credits, I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with those, but they're a rather lucrative part of the whole deal. You get to sell the credits, and that helps offset the cost of doing the installation in the first place. Between those two, we were actually able to have enough that we could coat the roofs with a white sealer. The sealer basically acts like a brand new roof. You get a 20-year warranty on both materials and labor, which is actually a better warranty than often you get with a new roof. And when it needs to be replaced, actually, you don't actually have to replace it entirely. You just put another coat of the sealer on. It costs a lot less than a new roof. And the advantage of that is not only do you now have a roof that is primed to go for solar, it makes the solar work better, which is a nice side benefit, is that because the roof is cooler, because you're reflecting the sunlight away from the rooftop, you drop the temperature some 20, 30 degrees, and the solar panels are more efficient. You get another 10, 12, 15% more efficiency out of the solar. So it's really one of those nice win-wins that folks have been trying to do for a long time to make the math work on this, and we figured out a way to do it. Now all you guys can do it too. When we finished signing the contract for these two, we have finished the contract and installing the 6 roofs right now. And now we're talking about our one big project, which is solar at our landfill, LED streetlights, LEDs, lighting for our parking garages, and a parking lot canopy over at our across from Foley Stadium at the Beaverbrook parking lot. This project actually is dollar-wise bigger than all the others put together. So this is a big one, and the contract's under negotiation now. I'll only say that when you deal with a service provider, performance contractor like this, the devil's in the details, and so it's very hard to get right. Even though we've done 3 of these already, you'd think it would be easy by now, but it isn't. So just forewarned is forearmed and all that. And so very briefly, I know I don't have a whole lot of time here, but I just wanted to touch on some of the other things we're doing very quickly. I'll just run through them. We have a Worcester Energy program that's going on, which is phase 1 we just completed, that's dedicated for residential customers, where we did a pilot for 25 small businesses, because that's an often overlooked segment in the energy efficiency world, and really in any world. If you're a small business owner, I've heard that many times, that we want to have something that focused on them, and we're trying to work with that. And thanks to the partners at Prism and National Grid for their program that we were able to coordinate through our audit program. We've entered into a 3-year contract to provide 25% of our electricity as Green E certified. We buy net metering credits, which will save us about $180,000 a year for the next 20 years, and we're potentially going to buy more at some point down the road in the not too distant future. Because of the work we're doing with that I've noted up above earlier, especially through the performance contracting, we can now join all these cool things like Green to Growth and the Green Communities Program and the DOE's Better Buildings Challenge and the Green Power Partnership from EPA. All those programs allow us to get a little visibility, which is nice, always nice. And it also allows us to show some credibility to folks who are, as we go out and sort of ask folks to do what we're doing. It's tough enough to get people interested in this stuff, but when you're not actually doing it yourself, people tend to turn off. But if you build credibility like we're trying to do here, people tend to listen. And then we're also looking at the possibility of the viability of an anaerobic digester over at our landfill. This would be, for those of you who don't know, a digester basically takes food waste and converts it to energy, which is something that, talking about food and energy is something that often gets overlooked, but we should definitely include that in the mix, not just at anaerobic digester, but up front too, in terms of how we grow food and how it's transported and all the rest. Doing it locally has some big advantages that all tie into what we're talking about today. And it's a business opportunity as well. So, almost done. So great. Why should I care? And these are the things we're going to talk about for everybody, because I think everyone here on the panel is going to want to talk about this. But you can see what we're trying to do and how it changed and how we're trying to make this count. What I wanted to, and I mentioned briefly, is I want to talk about the last one there, number 5, is to build credibility. That probably ultimately is going to be the most important thing we do. If you, like I, believe that climate change is a real thing, building credibility so that we can spread the word to other folks so that they can get on board, so that we don't mess the future up too badly for our kids and grandkids. This is big. So we can't just talk about it. We actually have to walk the walk, as it were. And then the last slide I have is on the additional benefits, which I will again let you read instead of me reading them over. But these kinds of things, which I think I've already talked about, are in addition to what you get to spending a lot of money. All this stuff is why we're in the game in the first place, I think. But I count it as additional benefits because it's hard to put an exact quantity of dollar figure to how valuable they are, but they're really valuable. And thank you. I had another slide in there, but you already know. I think I covered it already. So thank you very much.
Thanks, John. I'll ask that you hold your questions for John until the end. We'll have each panelist give their presentation, and then we'll do Q&A at the end. So now we're going to hear from Edward Anthes Washburn, the Deputy Port Director, City of New Bedford, about offshore wind.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for having me. Thank you, Kevin, for the introduction. I was actually born and raised in Worcester, so I had a nice 10-minute walk down Pleasant Street this morning. My mom and dad are in the audience as well. So last night I slept under my Move On poster and my 2004 Red Sox championship poster. So it was fun. As Kevin said, I am the Deputy Port Director in New Bedford, and can I have the clicker? And New Bedford has actually been in the energy space for hundreds of years. So this is a typical scene you would see in the mid-19th century. This is actually where my office is. There's no whale ships left anymore, except for one that was in New Bedford for this past summer. But you see this, and in the mid-19th century, New Bedford was the richest city in the United States, one of the richest cities in the world. It was the Dubai of the 1850s because of whale oil, because of energy. And the seal of the city says Licem Defundo, which means light, to light the world. So energy has been a big part of New Bedford, and sort of when you look at this scene, you see lots of jobs. There's the folks that actually work on the vessels. There's the captains. But if you go a little bit further, you start to see there's sail makers, there's shipbuilders, there's the people that build the barrels. There's the cordage manufacturers. And then when you dig a little bit further, the sort of the tertiary benefits of having energy production be in your municipality, you start to see some of the other benefits that you wouldn't normally think about. So the financial benefits, all of the banking, all of the insurance, tailors, all of those industries that all sort of spin off of one energy extraction industry. Really, you begin to see the economic benefit of a new source of energy. So, and obviously, New Bedford in the mid-19th century, because whaling was a big part of New Bedford, the funding for textiles, for westward expansion, for all of these other things that we all now know as American, it all happened sort of with New Bedford as the focal point. So when we look at how it worked in the 19th century, and then we sort of fast forward to today, from the New Bedford standpoint, we really want to get as much economic benefit out of this new source of energy, which has, you're not killing whales anymore, which is a good thing. You can harness it from the wind, and it's much more not cost-effective quite, that's probably not the right word, but it's less variable out on the ocean. And so this is a map of the Commonwealth, southeastern Massachusetts, with the different wind energy areas. That purple little blop in between the Vineyard and Nantucket and Cape Cod is Cape Wind, so that's sort of the first mover. The huge area south of the Vineyard is the Massachusetts wind energy area, and that's going to go out to lease hopefully by the end of the calendar year. And that was created with New Bedford and the fishing industry in New Bedford at the table. So we're the #1 fishing port in the country, and the federal government, along with the state, we were able to pare back that area so that it didn't affect the scallop industry. And that's the sort of dialogue that we really need to have. And both the federal government and the state government has been great at that. Then a little bit to the northwest of there is the Rhode Island, Massachusetts wind energy area. So if you put all these together, there's almost 3 gigawatts of potential power that can come from these areas, which is roughly half of the Massachusetts demand. So it's a pretty impressive, this is something that could be truly transformational. Cape Wind is the first mover. They're the private sector entity that's been doing this for so many years. And come in 2015, they're going to start importing some of those pieces that you see. So the blades, the nacelle is the actual gear. The tower pieces, the transition pieces is the yellow area, and then the foundation pieces as well. So we have the private sector that's on board. And the Commonwealth has invested $100 million into a new terminal facility in New Bedford. This is a picture of it from a few weeks ago. This is a 28-acre facility that will be 4,000 pounds per square foot, which basically means it can lift very heavy things. And we're going to have one of the strongest bulkheads on the East Coast in our port. This is an extension of our existing south terminal. And this is where those pieces are going to come off of the vessels. And it's important to look at that piece of infrastructure in the context of all the other pieces of infrastructure within the port and within the region of New Bedford. So if you look at that map, between 195 and Route 6, that's a big area. That's where a lot of the fishing boats are tied up. And south of Route 6 is where this facility is going to be. But there's obviously, we have 16,000 other linear feet of bulkhead. So when we look at this industry and we look at what it can mean for the port from an economic development standpoint, it's really crucial that we look at all of our assets and we figure out what we need to invest in to sort of get the biggest bang for your buck. So from here you see we have sort of the external pieces that have caused us to be where we are now. So I can't really read them, but so there's the production tax credit, the federal policy that is allowing offshore wind to become a new and renewable energy source in the United States. There's the geography. So New Bedford is located within a day's steam of 25% of the nation's wind reserves. So that geography is the real reason why we're having all this investment right now. And then the state infrastructure. So the Commonwealth is building this new piece of infrastructure. It's really exciting. How do we get, like I said, the biggest bang for your buck? So what have we done? The New Bedford Wind Energy Center was created about 13 or 14 months ago by our mayor, Mayor John Mitchell. And it's directed by, the managing director is Matt Morrissey, who's the former head of economic development for the city. And, the goal is to really try to, all economic development happens on the local level because it has all of the access to the workforce, all the access to the local businesses. So what are we doing? So we're looking at policy, looking at the federal production tax credit and investment tax credits, working with the federal delegation to make sure that those are still online. And on the state level, the energy bill is going to be a big part of what we're working on in the next session. When you look at business development, how do you, the biggest goal here is trying to connect businesses that are in New Bedford, in the surrounding areas, and in the Commonwealth to the offshore wind supply chain. So we actually mapped the entire offshore wind supply chain. We worked with the Global Logistics Wind Network to figure out where each piece, every piece that's in that huge 600-foot windmill, where does it come from? Are there companies in New Bedford or in southeastern Mass or in the Commonwealth that can actually do some of those parts? If they're not, how do we create joint ventures between a German company or a Danish company and a company here in the Commonwealth that makes something similar? And how do you bring those two things together in a way that really gives you access to our workforce, the folks that are already working in our cities and towns? And that really ties into the workforce development piece. Starting at a very young age, we're going into schools in New Bedford and talking to the youngsters and trying to get them excited about offshore wind. And all the way up, through high school and through the Bristol County Community College, we're doing a green energy, not just offshore wind, but also solar installation. So we're working with the local community colleges on training the workforce to be able to handle these jobs in the future. But a lot of that is going to happen through business development, working with the businesses that have already hired people, already have those connections in the community. They've already invested in the community. That's the way you're going to get the biggest job creation from what we see. And then finally, land use planning. We are the #1 fishing port in the country, so the space along our waterfront is not completely vacant. So how do you grow both industries in a sustainable way and allow for what is really a pretty big user of land, which is the offshore wind. I mean, you saw the scale of those windmills. So how do you develop the port in a way that doesn't push out any existing industries, grows both the commercial fishing industry as well as the offshore wind industry and the recreational industry, which is growing because of the other two industries. So how do you make sure they all happen at the same time? And we received a $300,000 grant from the Economic Development Administration to look at all parcel by parcel along our whole waterfront to see where we can consolidate some uses and really provide the next 25 years of planning for our waterfront and the uses that we see happening there. So I'll just end with. So obviously we see offshore wind and renewables as a huge part of our economic development strategy, but it's also a big part, of our economic reality right now. Yesterday I was at an ocean acidification conference in New Bedford. On ocean acidification, all the carbon that we're burning is 25% of it gets sequestered in the ocean, which lowers the pH of the ocean, which has a detrimental effect on exoskeletons of lobsters and scallops. And we're the #1 fishing port in the country, mostly because of the sea scallop. And as the pH levels drop, the sea scallops are having a harder time actually, building their shells. So New Bedford sees this as an economic opportunity, but also sees it as an imperative so that we can keep all of our lines of business going in a right way. So happy to take any questions. Thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thanks, Edward. Certainly an interesting set of challenges along the South Coast. And from there, we'll transition to the 413, and we'll hear from Chris in Northampton.
Okay, I'm on. Okay, so let's see. There's the clicker, and I kind of missed the note that there was supposed to be kind of a wrap-up of what your city has done. So I'm going to go over that really quickly and then go into my slides where I did focus on something specific. Similar to Worcester, Northampton has done a performance contract. Ours was much smaller city, $6 million, but it did ultimately reduce energy use in our city buildings by about 20%. We've put in a number of solar arrays. One of them is at a Rotec school, and the students there use it for education. They actually adjust the array a couple times a year, so we get more power out of it, and we get more SRECs out of it. Installed a few electric vehicle chargers, as many other communities in Massachusetts has done. Last year, we went through a strategic energy planning process with the Mass Clean Energy Center, and that's kind of lined us up to take a few more initiatives which aren't quite rolling out yet. We are a green community. That includes all of the different pieces that the green community programs have to do, the stretch code, high efficiency vehicle requirements and stuff like that. We ran a very successful solarized program. It's wonderful. When you run a solarized program, you almost always get to kind of brag, we beat everybody. We've got the best. And then the next year comes along and someone else beats you. So I think it just grows on itself. So the solarized program is a really wonderful way of getting a lot of PV installed throughout your community. We've ran an effort where we collaborated with National Grid and Columbia Gas in an effort to get what we called an energy concierge, or basically a helping hand for small businesses to take advantage of the utility rebate programs. And that has led to an established position in a local not-for-profit that now works with a number of towns, where it helps the small business folks take care of the myriad different programs that National Grid and Columbia Gas have. Sometimes it can be confusing when you're trying to run a business. These are the folks that can help you get through it. Coming up real soon, we are going to be looking at solar on the landfill. I'll get to that by the end of my presentation. LED streetlights also we're looking at. And part of stemming off the strategic energy plan, we hope to be developing do some marketing research on how do we do outreach for energy efficiency throughout the community. We want to try to add a little bit more focus to that effort instead of just kind of taking something off the shelf. We're going to hopefully do some marketing research on that. So the one I want to get to now that I focused on. So over the last couple of years, you see on the slides we have up here, August 2011, that's Irene. October 2011, that's the Halloween snowstorm. Of course, the one down the lower left is Sandy. Before that, in February 2010, there was what was known as a snowicane, where we had hurricane-force winds at the same time that we had massive amounts of snow. These are just almost, I'm not sure if they're actually qualified as 100-year storms that we're seeing back upon back, one upon one. Northampton, some of our generators didn't work for that October snowstorm. We had to scramble in order to help people out. And in 2013, we were approached by an outside group that had connections with Sandia National Lab, and Northampton decided to do a strategic energy, an effort to look at how do we harden our primary facilities, our primary emergency facilities. Through that process, we identified a major Connecticut River flood as kind of a piece to aim for. That was our baseline threat. That's because flood threats in Northampton are common. It's potentially a long-term impact. It could have a widespread impact, and it could displace people. People couldn't shelter in place. So that was, and so we looked at a 10-day or up to 21-day outage. In effect, what do you do when the city has to become its own energy provider for a short period of time? Let's see, the next is, which one is it here? The big green one, okay. There we go, okay. So we pulled together a working group of folks, the department heads from the fire, DPW, water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant, police, our IT department, facilities management, emergency personnel. When Northampton moved forward with this, National Grid joined us and helped support our efforts and was at the table as we went through this process. And the Mass Department of Energy Resources was involved also, keeping tabs of what we were doing. So with a contractor, they went through a process of interviews and workshops with all of our different department heads, site visits, and the first thing to do was identify the key services that we needed. So you'll see the two big boxes up there looking both at short, mid, and long-term power outages. The top box were kind of the identified key services that the municipality had direct control over. And what also popped out was a number of resources, the smaller box down below, some of the key services that we didn't have control over, whether it was telecommunications, cell towers, or the local hospital, we didn't have control over. But it was really important to go through that process and identify that these key services include things that the city doesn't have control over, because how can we help those? They're key services. They have to happen during a power outage. And how do we help support that? That's going to lead into our strategic plan. Let's see, next one is, from that, we then said, what of our facilities provide these services? And we identified 8 primary facilities. The one of them up there that is not city controlled is the hospital. I have it up there because you'll see the upper left, that's our DPW garage. And I was actually rather surprised myself, not being an emergency management person, that the DPW garage and the DPW facility popped up as one of the primary facilities. I would have thought, fire department, police department, but the DPW keeps the road cleared. That's where the control center is for water treatment plant, wastewater treatment plant. There's a huge amount that happens from your facilities, folks. So that was a really high priority facility. You see the one with all the beds, it's a Red Cross shelter that happens to be at our Votech school. And that happens to be right across the street from the DPW. And right behind the Votech school is the hospital, which currently has a couple of large combined heat and power plants. The Votech school, as I mentioned, has a 106 kilowatt PV array already on site. And so one of the pieces that popped out of the strategic plan was that little area right there. Can that be tied together into a microgrid so that the renewable energy systems that are available there, and possibly some new ones, possibly some more combined heat and power, possibly some more solar on parking lots or something, can that be combined so that those 3 facilities support each other and can island and become a small little microgrid during a power outage? That's something that we're still pursuing. In the lower left-hand side, though, I'm going to mention another one that popped out. The fire department headquarters, not only is it a really key facility, that's where all your emergency response is directed out of and comes out of. Not only that, but it happens to be on King Street, Northampton, where if you go down King Street, you have food stores, gas stations, banks, hardware stores, and it became identified that if you could establish a microgrid along that area, that you then reduce the cost of all of these other facilities to tie into that. I mean, it's the initial piece. Now that's too big for us even to look at, but that's kind of forward thinking. Where are we going? If you had one portion of your town that was really bomb-proof for 10 to 21 days, be able to support itself, that would go a long ways to keeping the community up and running during these times of when, as I said, the city has to basically provide its own power. So at the moment, that's beyond what we can reach for, but at the moment, the fire department headquarters, it had a beautiful south-facing roof, so we said, can we put PV up there with a battery backup and make that more bomb-proof and kind of to prepare for this coming down the road. And so we had an engineering study done which said that, well, that nice metal roof, nice south-facing metal roof is a copper roof, and it won't hold a PV array. But the parking lot could. And so we did apply for the Mass Department of Energy's the Resiliency Initiative, and we have received a little over $500,000 in order to support that effort. Let's see, make sure okay. The one thing that the Resiliency Initiative won't pay for is something that's already being subsidized or supported by different programs. So the solar array needed would not be paid for through this. What Northampton is hoping to do is our landfill is just closed, and so we've got room for about 3 or 4 megawatts of PV on the landfill. which we believe will attract a large developer. And with that large project, we're hoping to couple it in with PV arrays on the fire department parking lot, along a number of our parking, the city-owned parking lots, and possibly at Smith Voc coming up. So it's a new effort to try to kind of tie in one huge project with a bunch of small projects to see if we can get some cost savings. And they're all on SREC 2 highlighted land. So either over parking lots or brownfields for all get a high SREC rating. So that's what we're aiming for in order to get the PV array in there, and then the resiliency grant would provide the extra money needed to add the batteries and the islanding capability for the inverter at the fire headquarters. Going back to the strategic analysis for the for resiliency, the strategies that we aimed for had a couple of different steps. So immediate improvements, reduce energy use. If emergency facilities can use less energy, there's less to have to support when power goes out. Improve the dependability of backup generators. This is one I didn't realize, not being an emergency person, I didn't realize that backup generators really are not meant for long-term running. They're meant for a day, 2 days, 3 days, and then they might start going down. And you may not even get that out of them if you don't exercise them properly. So they should be run under load, new information for me. And then long-term improvements is what I've been talking about. Co-locate renewable and clean energy solutions at your emergency facilities. Leverage shared assets and networked opportunities, whether it's like the 3 campus building I was talking about, so we can leverage those together, or portable generators that can be shipped, moved around to different places so you can have a backup to a backup generator. At the fire headquarters, let's see, one more slide. Oh, here we go. I forgot I should have hit that slide before. But so what have we done at the fire headquarters? Well, at the fire headquarters, we've already reduced energy use by 15%, partly through the performance contract. We are not really have our eyes on that facility and all our other emergency facilities. If we're going to look for energy efficiency savings, that's one place we definitely want to continue looking. Our generator is now tested weekly under load. It wasn't before, so now we're doing that. And as I mentioned, we're aiming for 110 kilowatt PV array over the parking lot. That would provide about 50% of the annual load of that building. 640 kilowatt hour battery bank. And the way the system would operate is that if under normal operations, it would act just as a normal grid-tied solar, serving the building loads, maintaining the battery voltage, net metering any remainder to the grid so you can use it again when you don't have as much sun. When the power goes out, it would automatically disconnect into a standalone operation. The PV will attempt to satisfy the emergency building loads for the facility. If the load at the facility is too big for the PV array, then it'll start pulling from the batteries. And if the load is too big from the PV array and the batteries have been diminished to the point where they don't have anything else to supply, then it would kick on the generator automatically. And then the generator would help, and the PV would both help in parallel to feed the building and recharge the batteries. In addition, during normal operations, the PV array and batteries could at times stand alone if there's a large, summertime peak, and we'll look at working with the utilities that they may be able to just kind of turn us off so that our facility islands at that moment to help the utility shave the peak. And then, of course, since your demand charges depend on your greatest demand throughout the year, it could be set up to be programmed so that as you're hitting that top demand, it really starts pulling from the batteries at that point, so it can kind of shave off some of the demand. So that's and that we should be able to get some more economic benefit out of that.
Chris, we're starting to run short on time, so
I'm all set.
I'm all
done.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thanks, Chris. So now we're going to go to the town of Sutton and Jennifer Hager, Planning Director.
Maybe I should just say what they said. There you go, we're done. Can I have the clicker, please? All right, we're the little guys. Our community is about 9,600 people. So we approach things from a slightly more ground-up local support angle with the extreme support of the Department of Energy Resources and National Grid and their dedicated providers like PRISM. How did things start? How did saving money and the environment start in the town of Sutton? Back in 2008, the Board of Selectmen, during their annual goals session, where they designate approximately 5 to 8 goals every year that it is the responsibility of the town administrator to carry out, selected the goal of pursuing energy conservation and renewable energy. The town administrator in the town of Sutton was previously with Lowell, was previously with Fall River, came from the big guy areas, had some great contacts, had some great insight, and has proved to be a really great asset to the town. Why, from the bio, my bio, why is the person in charge of pretty things doing the green energy project? Well, that's called delegation, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. So lacking an assistant town administrator, the implementation of energy saving measures fell on my desk in concert with the town administrator and all of my local department heads. We actually began looking at energy reduction the year that the selectmen said they wanted to begin that. Otherwise, the town administrator wouldn't get a very good review at the end of that year. So we looked at very simple things. What can we do in each and every building to remind people to turn off lights, to do those basic things that start to bring your energy reduction into line? We actually applied and became a green community. We applied in 2010. I believe our designation actually hit at the beginning of 2011. Since that time, we've received over $300,000 in green community grants. And we've used those funds to investigate a number of things, trying to going in a multi-pronged approach. Our latest 2014 grant, which we're in the process of implementing right now, contained $213,000 plus in energy conservation initiatives. About $169,000 of that was actual grant money. Those initiatives are estimated to lower our energy consumption by over 117,000 kilowatts a day and to save us 4,000 gallons of oil. The estimated savings are about $31,000 annually, which is small potatoes to some of the larger communities, but is a significant chunk of some of the costs that we incur. Our 2012 grant, which was our baby step grant, we initiated programs that saved us about over $7,000 annually. Even though these sound like very small measures, and we'll go through some of the details on the next slide, by 2013, we had achieved well over 25% savings across our entire municipality. For whatever reason, mainly because the state of Massachusetts offers such significant incentives for solar development, Sutton jumped in on solar with both feet. Early in the process, we investigated, or the town administrator investigated different funding sources. At the time, ERA grants were out there. He applied for and received a $150,000 ERA grant. He requested a $220,000 technical assistant grant, and town meeting jumped on board and gave $590,000 in municipal funding. In 2011, our first 201 kilowatt system, which you see in that picture there, went live on top of our early learning center. The entire debt on that system will be paid off in 2016. Subsequently, 2013, 2014, we established 3 more solar PV systems on the Manchog Fire Station, our sewer treatment plant, and the senior center. The Manchog Fire Station is a teeny tiny little building. So a good section of its power that it generates is net metered to the senior center, pretty much zeroing out the electric bills on 2 of those 3 facilities. We are about to complete the construction of our middle school, high school renovation, and another 100,000 kilowatts will come online with that project. As you can see from the last paragraph there, we have 279 kilowatts of solar capacity right now. With the school coming online, we'll have 379. At the most recent SREC cost, we'll be earning $104,000 plus that goes directly back towards the debt payout on those facilities. There's not one of these facilities that has a basically a payout, or I should say a break-even date more than 7 years from now. So no energy bills on any of these facilities except for the sewer treatment plant because they just use tons of energy. And in 7 years, no debt on any of these facilities. We too conducted a solarized program. In the Blackstone Valley, we take pride in partnering with our Blackstone Valley communities. We partnered with the town of Millbury, held an energy fair, complete with a member of the Department of Environmental Protection who lives in Millbury, dressed up as a sunshine, dancing around. So if you need dirt on DEP employees, I've got it. Though she was great, I'll have to say. A lot of residents took advantage of the solarized program, and we actually are considering instituting round 2 because we really think it was a great program. So what have we accomplished to date? Again, Sun's a small community. All of this was really accomplished at the local level with the assistance of our local, with DOER and local National Grid officials. But we have done lighting upgrades just everywhere. We have sensors at the daylight dimming sensors at the schools, so lights are not on if there's daylight. We also have those at our fire departments, our senior center, and our wastewater treatment plant. We have a heat recovery system at the municipal center so that we have drastically reduced our oil use. We went a little outside the box. We have many water resources in the town of Sutton and several dam facilities. So we did partner with a local engineering firm, and we conducted a hydroelectric, I shouldn't say local, Weston and Sampson's not really local, but we did partner with Weston and Sampson. We did a hydroelectric feasibility study at 2 of our dam facilities. The payback on that was well over 20 years, and it had some environmental impacts, but we thought it was extremely important to look at that, not only from our perspective to see if we could gain something, but to kind of be a model and a resource for other communities who might want to look at that in the future. In this 2014 effort, we are instituting variable frequency drives at the school and demand control ventilation at the school that uses CO2 monitors. So if you have a classroom full of kids and the CO2 levels go up, the demand control ventilation kicks on. If you've got an empty room, you don't have ventilation there. You're not wasting energy when the need isn't there. We are doing exterior LED lighting at the school. We're doing LED building lighting at the school. And our energy manager is currently doing cost-benefit analysis on street lighting LEDs. And little things like high-efficiency water heaters at the town hall are other things that we've pursued. As recently as last evening at town meeting, the reason I look a little tired, the town meeting voted to really put an actual policy statement into our general bylaw, which basically says that for all new municipal buildings and facilities going forward, the town is required to investigate sustainable energy systems and to implement them in concert with a cost-benefit analysis on those items. So all new RFPs that go out on our buildings will include that provision. The selectmen are really very dedicated to making sure that we're doing everything we can, not just to develop alternative energy sources like solar, but to really get to the crux of energy, which is really reducing your energy use. It's great to have the solar and the clean energy to offset the more carbon-based energy forms, but we really need to reduce energy use as a long-term effort. We also voted a pilot agreement last night with a large solar facility. We've partnered with the town of Northbridge on that project. The solar facility will straddle the lines. Both towns have implemented pilots. We've established an intermunicipal agreement, and we will be receiving a reduction in energy costs from that project. And I am very lucky now to have a successful grant for a green energy manager. Doreen, give a wave. That's our green energy manager. So now I get to do less work and she gets to do more. So if you have any questions on specifics, she's the lady. Not that I won't talk to you, but she's the lady. But they're all little efforts. They're all efforts supported by the Department of Energy Resources, but they add up and they pay off. And after the next 7 years, many of these will just be giving us really revenue. We found that we can really make significant gains by just implementing these small changes and really taking advantage of the state agencies and the resources that are out there.
Great, thank you. I know we've pushed into our coffee break a little bit. I could use another cup, but if you'll bear with us for a few more minutes. Anybody have any questions? We heard some really good concepts and initiatives from our panelists. Any questions for them about their specific initiatives and how they approached them? Anyone? I'll add, oh, in the back.
So, quick question for John. In the beginning, you had mentioned that there were pluses and minuses, so to speak, for working with a performance contractor in ESCO. Could you just speak a little bit to what you think some of the drawbacks might be for end users contemplating going that route?
Sure. Probably the biggest concern when you deal with a performance contractor is, I mean, you just have to go in with eyes open that, you know, most of these companies are pretty big. They've done this before, and you haven't, or have done, you know, maybe one before. In our case, we've up to 3, but for that first one, we don't have the experience they did. And that contract is, can be both a tool that can be used in your benefit, but also can be used as a tool for their benefit. And so when we started this whole process, just to give you the quick background, it took about, from when we decided we wanted to move forward before we got actually a contract executed, over 2 years. And it wasn't because we were leaving it on a shelf and coming back to it every few months or so. It was because it took 2 years for us to negotiate a contract that we felt comfortable enough that we could move forward with Honeywell to get what we wanted in a fashion that would allow us to get the energy savings, of course, but also to get it done in a way that met our standards, which is not always what a Honeywell and I don't mean to pick on Honeywell, but any of these companies might do. So it can be a real challenge to get the contract done properly. We had, as I said, have been very grateful that we spent that time up front, because now as we're closing out the document, closing out the work, I should say, we can actually point to the document and say, no, you owe us this, because you might not get that, because that's not always the easiest. They do a great job of installing the equipment, but the paperwork, no one cares about the paperwork until you care about the paperwork. And that moment, we'll be able to look back and say, oh, we have that because we're doing our due diligence now, and we have a contract that allows us to push back and say, no, you promised us this. So, I mean, it's simple stuff. Everyone knows that you need that, but actually doing it and making it work can be kind of a relentless process. So that would be the biggest concern I'd have.
Great, thank you. One more question?
Cities for free lamps for anything that has anything to do with the city, towns, or states. Some of those programs have wrapped up, but they do tend to come around again. Right now, the one that's wrapping up is free lamps, whether they're energy efficient, fluorescent, or LED lamps. That will be wrapping up by the end of this month.
Great, thank you. I want to thank all of our panelists. I will ask them to hang around the front of the stage for additional questions from the audience. Appreciate you sticking with us as we went over a little bit, and enjoy your coffee break, but thank you all.
Okay, the door is shut, the music is down, and it's time for our State of the State panel. I'm going to be introducing our moderator, who will then introduce all of our panelists. Our moderator is David O'Connor, and David is the Senior VP for Energy and Clean Technology at ML Strategies, which is a subsidiary of the law firm Mintz-Levin. He helps energy and technology companies shape and navigate emerging legislation, that means legislation that is still in process, policies and regulations in ways that will help them grow. He has worked with energy efficiency services, wind developers, solar and biomass power plants, and smart grid technology companies, among others in the energy niche. Prior to joining ML Strategies, David served as Commissioner of the Massachusetts Division of Energy Resources from 1995 to 2007. David has been an invaluable resource to the WBJ, serving as part of our brain trust that has helped sort of create this program every year. So we appreciate his help, and we appreciate him moderating this session. David O'Connor.
Thank you, Peter, very much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I do want to compliment Peter and the Worcester Business Journal for this conference. I think it's really established itself as one of the best really every year, and I say that because it really tends to bring together a group of people who have common sort of issues and needs, and provides very practical information for how to address those energy needs. So I think the conference works extremely well. It's why I keep coming back. I'm glad to see all you here, and I'm delighted to have a strong panel here to focus on state policies. So we have three individuals today who can give you a very good picture of all the things that are happening really at the state level and with the utilities who work with state agencies to provide programs for customers. And I want to introduce each of our speakers as they come along. So let me begin by introducing Meg Lasardi. Meg is the acting commissioner at the Department of Energy Resources, and she's basically taken over that position fairly recently after a fairly distinguished tenure at the department as the director of the Green Communities Program, which she's been doing since 2011. This is the program that provides municipalities with Green Communities designation, a fairly rigorous set of requirements to achieve that designation. And we now have 123 municipalities are in the Green Communities Program, receiving funding and technical assistance and so forth from the department. So there's just no question that Meg has really been a dynamic force in growing that program, which grew out of the 2008 Green Communities Act, the one that really set the Commonwealth on a pretty significant set of new policy initiatives related to clean energy and energy efficiency here in the Commonwealth. So before that, Meg was working at the department. She's been there since 2005, and she has had a career prior to that, basically working as a chief of operations at a major nonprofit in Dorchester, a project manager at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, consultant with Booz Allen and Hamilton. So she brings a very wide variety of technical and managerial talent to the position. And I think it's really fortunate that we in the Commonwealth have her as commissioner. So please join me in welcoming Meg Lasardi.
Where do we advance the slides?
We're wondering how to advance the slides. Oh, here it is.
Okay, and it's not up there yet. There we are. Okay, great. All right. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here this morning. I'm doing my Worcester business tour this morning. First thing this morning, I was at the Central Mass Financial Executives Organization. And it's always great to be in Worcester, one of our first green communities in our first group. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. John, it's always good to be here. Oops, a little bit fast on the trigger there. Okay. So just to kind of set the framework, these three key pieces of legislation were passed early in the Patrick administration and really set the framework for all of our nation-leading energy policies and programs. So we have the Green Communities Act, and I'll go into a couple of the programs that have come out of there that businesses can definitely take advantage of. We have the Global Warming Solutions Act, which sets aggressive targets for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, and the Green Jobs Act. And all of these pieces of legislation are interconnected in that, to meet our targets in the Global Warming Solutions Act, we developed a climate plan, and it refers back to a lot of the programs as a means for, that came out of the GCA, as a means for meeting those targets. And then, of course, the programs and policies have led to economic growth, and which is fed into the Green Jobs Act. And there you can see, this will be the only slide I have about this, but the Mass CEC recently issued the 2014 Clean Jobs Report. And over the past 4 years, we've seen an increase in jobs in the clean energy sector of 47%. Double-digit growth every year. We have 88,000 workers in the clean energy sector at close to 6,000 firms. So these policies have led to economic growth. So one of the first things, energy efficiency as our first fuel. And I'm going to let the other speakers on the panel speak to the Mass Save programs through the utility programs, but I think it's important to note that we set policies in place and revamped the energy efficiency programs so that we are pursuing all cost-effective energy efficiency. The bottom line is, before we worry about going out and procuring more generation, we want to be doing energy efficiency first. So under the energy efficiency programs, there are, cost-benefit tests that have to be done to demonstrate that. And if the measure meets that test, then it is included in the energy efficiency programs. Through the Green Communities Act, we set up an Energy Efficiency Advisory Council that works with the 3-year plans that came out of the Green Communities Act. And the utilities are incentivized to do energy efficiency. They have targets that they must meet. And doing energy efficiency provides cost savings. And I think the previous panel with the green communities, and the other municipalities demonstrate they have taken a lot of advantage of the utility programs and accessed those incentives. Whenever we provide grants in the Green Communities program, we require them to make sure they access those incentives. So there's a lot of savings to be there. And also our state facilities are another example. I see Bob Daniels in the back from Worcester State. These guys have set really great example in the public sector of taking advantage of all of the programs with the energy efficiency with the utility programs. And of course, we can't skip the last bullet. We have been ranked #1 in energy efficiency over the past 3 years in front of California. Everybody always thinks that California is in the lead, but we are in the lead here in Massachusetts 3 years in a row. And this is just to show the investment that is being made in energy efficiency and then the returns that we are seeing. So we're seeing close to a 4-to-1 return. So this is what our 3-year plans are based on, or what they are going to produce. And, the benefits are avoided cost savings, but also seeing benefits in things like, raw materials and, water. So it makes good economic sense to be doing energy efficiency. Solar. We have a very robust solar program here in Massachusetts. And solar is a good way also to hedge against the high electricity prices that, we are all expecting this winter. So we set up, when Governor Patrick came into office, there was roughly only 3 megawatts of solar installed. He set a goal of 250 by 2017. We blew through that goal 4 years early. We have a new goal now of 1,600 megawatts by 2020. And how are we going to get there? Through the SREC 2 program. So in Massachusetts, we have to get a certain percentage of our electricity from renewables, and then we have what is known as a solar carve-out. So then a portion of that has to come from solar. And so the SREC program helps to set, you know, the growth of solar in Massachusetts. With the SREC 2 program, we keep referring to managed growth. And it is providing incentives for the type of installations that businesses would readily take advantage of. You know, greater incentives are provided for rooftop-mounted solar versus large-scale ground-mounted greenfield type of projects. Also, more incentives are provided for solar canopies, the parking lot type of installations that you may have seen at REI out in Framingham at Shoppers World. Also, we were 4th in installed capacity nationally, and I think that that is a great achievement as well. So we were up there with the sunnier states like California and Arizona, and once again, economic growth. You can see the economic impact and the growth in jobs in the solar sector. And then this just demonstrates where we are now. Like I said, 3 megawatts when Governor Patrick came into office. Now we're at 664 megawatts. Combined heat and power. So in Massachusetts, we've seen a real growth in combined heat and power, and this is a good opportunity for businesses to look at that have a significant constant thermal load, whether it be for manufacturing processes or, you know, a kitchen operation, but having a ready, steady, you know, thermal load. And we have incentives through the utility programs for CHP, and we also, you can get ACE, as we call them, Alternative Portfolio Standard credits. So I mentioned that we have a renewable portfolio standard for the purchase of renewable electricity, but we also have an alternative portfolio standard. And CHP qualifies under the alternative portfolio standard, natural gas CHP. So there's an incentive provided over the lifetime of the project in addition to the utility incentive that you can receive. Renewable thermal technologies. So for businesses that have a significant thermal load, in particular propane, oil, or electric heat, renewable thermal can be a great option for your businesses. And one of the things out of recent legislation, we got authorization to add renewable thermal to the alternative portfolio standard. So previously it was all about electricity. Well, now we can also include the thermal side. So that will once again be able to provide an incentive over the life of the project. We're in the midst of, at the very beginning stages of developing the regulations for the renewable thermal technologies under the APS. We will be looking at a pre-regulatory stakeholder meeting sometime in November, and the release of regulations in early 2015. Cleaner vehicles and fuels. So a couple different things up here, but I'm going to focus on the Mass EVIP program and workplace charging. So Massachusetts employers that have 15 employees or more are eligible for grants under the Mass EVIP workplace charging program. And you can receive up to 50% of the installed costs for level 2 charging stations. There's $1.4 million set aside for this. As of mid-September, we have provided grants for 70 installations. We have a business in Wellesley that has taken advantage of this and installed 16 EV charging stations. And what we are doing with the programs that we have around electric vehicles are that we want to create the infrastructure for electric vehicles in the Commonwealth. Through Mass EVIP, we've given out a lot of grants to public entities for both charging stations as well as electric vehicles. And we want to make electric vehicles mainstream so that they don't seem so, you know, different. And so one of the other things that we've done in relation to that is the More EV program. Any Massachusetts resident can go to an electric vehicle dealer and receive a $2,500 rebate for a battery electric vehicle or a $1,500 rebate for a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. And that was launched in June, and we've had over 300 rebates provided to date. And once again, we have about 50% of the funding still available there. So something else for folks to take advantage of. But we also have a very strong Clean Cities program here in Massachusetts. And that is a partnership through Mass DOE, and we have a lot of expertise in our office to help you deal with your fleets and look at alternative vehicles and alternative sources for your vehicles. So that is just a great technical resource to take advantage of. So I think that I've pretty much gone through all of these. Like I said, I'll let the other gentlemen on the panel kind of go into the details about Mass Save, but energy efficiency first. Energy efficiency, I can't say it enough. And you can get there by contacting Mass Save through the website or your account representative. And you can see significant savings through energy efficiency. We talked about solar PV, renewable thermal, combined heat and power, and alternative transportation. These are all options to not only just reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, but they all make good economic sense. One thing that I will just add on that I don't have a slide about, we do know that electricity prices are going to go up this winter. Folks have seen the press around that, and it's a complicated situation. The utilities are, with the rates, are passing on the price of the commodity with these rates. So it's what the market is demanding right now. We're seeing an increase in the cost of electricity generation in the wintertime. And one of the issues around this is that we are constrained for natural gas supply here in the Northeast. So this is a regional problem. It's not just a Massachusetts problem. And what you have is in the wintertime, you have both the thermal competing with the electricity for the natural gas in the pipeline. And the thermal gets, first priority with the way the contracting works. And we've seen a real shift to electricity generation from natural gas. And so natural gas is driving the price of electricity. So one of the things that we are doing at DOER, as directed by the governor, is we're doing what is called a low demand scenario. And we are looking at what do we need in additional natural gas? Do we need additional natural gas? And if so, how much? So the low demand scenario refers to the fact that first we're going to look at the base case using the ISO New England forecasts for electricity demand in the region and making sure we've factored in all the policies of the Patrick administration around energy efficiency and renewables, and then look at how we can reduce that demand to a low demand scenario through additional renewables that are cost effective. We're going to make sure that we're looking at emissions, reliability, keeping the lights on, and the cost impacts. And then once we put all that together, do we need additional natural gas, and if so, how much? So we're under a schedule where that report is going to be released before the end of December. We had our first stakeholder meeting last Wednesday. We have additional stakeholder meetings scheduled October 30th and November 20th, and we have information on our website about that, and you are more than welcome to participate in that if you so choose. And there's my contact information, and thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Meg, very much. You did an admirable job of staying on time. And so I think actually before we go to our next speaker, there's an opportunity for one or two questions if people would like to ask them now rather than have you have to wait all the way till the end. Yes, please, right here.
In terms of the proposal to expand the capacity for some of the gas pipelines that are being talked about, is that report that you just referenced going to have any impact on that proposal or not?
So is this? It is on? Okay, thanks. So it will provide good information for potential proposed pipelines. Any proposed pipeline has to go through FERC for approval. Massachusetts would be an intervener in that process through the Energy Facilities Siting Board. We are not looking at any particular gas project in this study, but it can help to inform, how much natural gas do we need? Because, there is the question of a need for additional natural gas, but then there's the question of building out too much. It gets into energy security issues. Do we want to be so reliant on a single fuel source? So we have to watch for that. And then plus we also want to look at our Global Warming Solutions Act and our aggressive emissions targets there. So the idea is that this will provide good information for any proposed pipelines, but it's not going to address any particular proposed pipelines that are being discussed out there.
Just one clarification, the reference to FERC would be the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, so the process of approving a particular pipeline really is administered and decided at the federal level. In a proceeding like that, as Meg said, Massachusetts is an intervener, but is not the decision maker finally. Another question? Yes, please, right here.
Question on following up on the Green Communities program, which has been a great program, by the way. We've been very happy with it, and lots of energy efficiency measures have been installed in communities. But the follow-up on commissioning and ongoing commissioning to make sure that the energy savings are staying there. I know you have the ability to monitor the energy use in the town, but also getting into more detail about using some of the cheaper software analytics to analyze how to optimize the efficiency of municipal buildings. Looking into that at all.
Right. I mean, with this last competitive ground, we funded, several projects that are doing just that. Yes, so they're in Carlisle. So. Looking at the analytics with retro commissioning, so we funded retro commissioning and looking at the software with the analytics and feeding it back into the system and how to improve operations. So we, there's there's typical retro commissioning, but then there are some newer products out there with these software products, and I believe that that's what Carlisle is doing. So we have had a couple of municipalities that we funded for those types of products to look at. I mean, folks have, so and we want to learn from what comes out of those. We've had a lot of vendors come into our office and talk about their products for doing analytics. And, we basically want to learn more because there are a lot of new products out there, and we want to see what comes forward. We do have Mass Energy Insight, which is basically monitoring energy consumption, but looking at real-time data, being able to do interventions on a real-time basis at the measure level. We do recognize the advantages of that, so we're working to learn more and see what we could do around funding and that in the future.
Thank you. Okay, great. Our next speaker is Tim Rowan. Tim is the Director of Energy and Environmental Policy at National Grid. As you probably well know, a large electric utility company with almost 7 million customers between the New England states and New York. Tim's had a long career, over 32 years with National Grid, and he's been, among other things, the Director of Product Management, a Business Services Vice President, Director of Distributed Resources, and so on. So he brings a really wide variety of experience and knowledge to the job. I know I often have worked side by side with Tim on issues, and he brings a depth of knowledge that's really tremendously helpful to customers and to regulators. So with that, please join me in welcoming Tim Rowan.
Great, thank you, David, for that. And it's always fun being back here for the Worcester Business Journal's Energy Summit. It's been a number of years I've been coming to this. And it's always nice to kind of talk through how things have changed from year to year, to have, put some perspective on that. We've been running efficiency programs for 30 years here in Massachusetts, as most of you know. And obviously with the Green Communities Act and the new 3-year plans, which Commissioner Lusardi mentioned, we ramped up those programs tremendously, and really a lot of opportunity for all classes of customers, residential, commercial, industrial, et cetera. There's also lots of other policies that have been brought to fore that folks can really take advantage of to manage their energy bills. And that's really the key nowadays, is managing your energy bill. You really have to understand where you're using the energy and how to optimize what you're spending on energy and what to do about that. So when we talk about activity around things like distributed generation, that's one of the key aspects of what the Green Communities Act brought in terms of providing additional value around things like net metering, the solar renewable energy certificate program, the SREC program, which was mentioned earlier. So it's been a massive success. You can see from the chart here just what's going on here. In the month of September, we had over 1,100 interconnection applications. Obviously, most of those are small or residential. But just a few years ago, when we talked residential, they were 2, 3, 4 kilowatts in size. Now we're routinely seeing things 6, 7, 8, 10 kilowatts in size for projects at residential levels. Fully a third of our metering group's work nowadays is actually setting meters so people can have net metering. We're talking about 50 to 60 meters a day we're setting for that. And again, 800 to 900 residential applications a month are coming in, and lots of additional work in terms of both the commercial and industrial size projects. As Commissioner Lusardi mentioned, the new SREC 2 program is really trying to optimize what's going on in the solar world to have more emphasis and obviously more value on roof mounted systems versus clearing the trees and all those big solar farms that we've seen built throughout the state of Massachusetts. And you go drive along Route 2 or up through any of the north central Massachusetts, you see virtually hundreds of megawatts of solar farms up there, which have been provided extreme value for our customers out there. But you can see what's going on. You can see what's happened, going from 0 to 100 miles an hour here in terms of distributed generation. You can see there's a lot of megawatts that have been added, the bulk being solar. But look carefully at the combined heat and power, the good old cogeneration that we talked about. That's a huge opportunity for customers. And even if you don't have a huge thermal load, you can always optimize a smaller combined heat and power system for the thermal load you have, right? That's the key piece here. People talk about combined heat and power being 500 kilowatts, 2 megawatts, and all the rest of it. The reality is there's a huge opportunity for the smaller projects that folks really need to take advantage of and do what they can for the domestic hot water needs. And I think that's something we can look at. And we've got significant rebates around those, which I'll talk to in a minute here. But you can also see there's also another 1,200 megawatts in the study process. Folks are looking to get into these programs. So again, the programs are out there for customers. Really need to work through them to understand and help people with the interconnection. The key piece here, though, is the net metering. In the old days, the utilities allowed or were in charge of when you got net metering. Today, it's very different. You do have to get a cap allocation in order for us to allow you to be net metered. Now, recently we hit our public cap. You can see right there along the top, the bottom, I mean, that our cap is essentially full for public entities. And those are cities and towns or things like water utilities and that sort of thing, and the state prisons and state colleges. See, it's full up, but you'll note that in a couple of weeks here, the caps will increase for the public sector from the 3% currently up to 5%. Now, if you look at the waiting list on the public cap, you'll see we'll quickly eat into at least almost 1% of the 2% incremental add to it. And we actually predict that by second quarter 2015, we'll probably be at the public cap as well, which is why a lot of parties worked in the last legislative session, and David O'Connor worked with us closely too, to kind of figure out how to better spend our customers' money. Because, as you know, there's no free lunch. If someone's getting 18 cents for net metering for a project that puts out a non-firm product that's worth 4 cents on the wholesale market, that delta cost is absorbed by all of us on our electric bills. And so we have to figure out what's the best way to continue the growth. Because no one's looking to stop what we're doing in the solar world. We really need to get more out there than we have today. But let's figure out what the best way to spend the money is. And the solar bill that we worked on late through the spring last year came very close to passing. We'll be looking to work on it again, because otherwise we keep just going to the well and then just increasing the cap all the time, which really isn't any sort of long-term policy. So together we work very closely with the DOER, with the utilities, lots of outside parties on the bill. Again, at the last minute, it just didn't go through, but we have some hope for this coming session that we'll be able to do something different there as well. Again, instead of these stops and starts with this cap, let's just have a program that's out there that folks know about going forward. So there's a lot of certainty around that market. So the entities and vendors who supply and sell those systems know what's going on, and customers know what to expect too going forward if they can't do something this year, as an example. So we talked about some of the incentives, and Commissioner Lusardi mentioned some of the values here. You know, I talked about net metering. Today it's worth 15 to 18 cents a kilowatt hour for the output. You also can sell the environmental attributes of renewable systems and specifically solar for fairly high values. You can see this, what the SREC values are. The alternative energy credits that were talked about for the combined heat and power and the new thermal renewable are out there. Doesn't seem like a lot, but you add that to the other value streams and it can really help out a lot. I talked about the combined heat and power. You got some pretty significant rebates around that. And that's something really we all need to work a little harder on, because that's a huge effort that will reduce your energy costs, but more importantly, will dramatically lower your greenhouse gas footprint at your facility. It's very important to do that. But really interested in DG. The parallel panel is talking about our Worcester Smart Grid pilot. And a lot of that has to do with how do we further integrate more intermittent renewables and or combined heat power into the system, and how to maximize and optimize that two-way power flow that really need the system to move to. Now, I will say that under the DG world, it does get a little complicated. You know, as we get higher and higher saturation in certain parts of our system, the analyses just become more complicated. And so we do have to have patience with the process, because we do have to study the system and make sure it won't affect anything to do with your neighbors if you're putting in some distributed generation. Very, very important that we do those analyses. But again, the saturation in certain parts of our system is getting very, very high, and the studies are actually getting more complicated, not less complicated. Even though we've got a crack team working on those, it is something that we have to continue to work through. Energy efficiency, critically important. New programs here, really understanding. A lot of folks don't know really what to do on site here. So some of the new programs we're talking about, some of the specialists to really dive into the details, especially from the process side, and get into the nuts and bolts of your systems. And whether you have industrial processes or just commercial or retail space, there's huge value in terms of just the conditioning world, whether you're heating, cooling, and how you're distributing that cool air or warm air throughout your facility. Mostly, you know, to save energy, but also to maximize comfort for the employees, which obviously helps with the productivity going forward as well here. So one of the newer things we're doing, efficiency, is something that we're kicking off on the island of Nantucket. The load growth on the island is just dramatically higher than here in the mainland. There's lots of opportunity there. There's a huge tourist industry, obviously. You know, we're looking at a condition where, because of the load growth, we're actually looking at potentially having to put in yet another cable that connects the area approximately around Hyannis to Nantucket Island. So we're looking to do what we call a non-wires alternative project. Really is looking at how do we optimize or use customer-side resources to manage the load on the island. And I say manage it because no one's talking about shutting anything off or getting anyone uncomfortable. You know, when you manage air conditioning load, you're not shutting it off. You're not letting your house get to 100 degrees when it's hot outside. You're simply raising the temperature by a few degrees. And if everyone does just a little bit, it turns into massive amounts of energy load relief at certain hours. You can see in this particular condition, our peak load condition is in the later evening. So, and solar actually can help, because what happens, we can use the output of solar earlier in the day when it's maximized in terms of when its output around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And so we can delay, frankly, having to manage air conditioning load till later in the day. So a lot of different things we're thinking about over there, and we're looking to, we started the project just recently, and we'll work on that for a number of years to see how we make out. If we get a lot of customer participation, we potentially could defer a cable that could be $50, $70, $100 million. Who knows by the time we get to there. And so that's a huge value to the customers on Nantucket. But it also helps us understand, again, optimizing all the money that we and our customers are spending on efficiency, distributed generation, and incentives to try to optimize the spend that we do on our distribution system, the poles and wires outside in the street and the underground cables we have here. So again, it's all about targeting the energy efficiency and eventually working in concert with the grid modernization work that the Department of Public Utilities has going on, and we all have plans we're working on, so that we can kind of flow them together as we go forward here. Big bug in the room here is the basic service cost. You've read about in the papers. Commissioner Lusardi mentioned the aspects here, really working with the energy efficiency folks. There are obviously competitive suppliers. People kind of forget, we restructured our industry back in 1998. You've been able to buy from competitive energy suppliers for that since then. And so our prices are simply the default. If you can't get a supplier, we provide that supply, and it's a complete pass-through. We don't make any money on it. We don't lose any money on it. We just get all the heat from our customer service calls when the bills go through the roof like they're going through the roof, unfortunately. But there's a lot of opportunity. Simple thing like budget billing. If you know your bill's going to be going up a lot, you can call and get a flat bill for 12 months, and that gets just changed on an annual basis. So a lot of value there. Commissioner Lusardi talked about it. We've known about this gas-electric interdependency for 15 years. This is not a new problem, and unfortunately, because we just haven't been able to move forward on it, it's finally accumulating in these massive price hikes. And again, we do expect the prices to drop again come the spring and fall, but it is something that we all have to work together on and work with internally your company at your homes to try to reduce your usage as much as possible throughout the winter months this month. So with that, take some questions.
Thank you, Tim, very much. I think I'm going to hold questions on this one and just let Joe Hall get his remarks in, and then since they're both basically doing programs for the utilities, we'll combine the questions for them. So let me just introduce Joe. Joe is actually a program manager with NSTAR these days, responsible for their gas energy efficiency operations, and I think here primarily in the Central Mass area, if I'm not mistaken, Joe. He's had a long history in the utility industry, actually with National Grid for many years, and more recently with NSTAR. He's an accredited lead professional, and so he has a lot of technical expertise, has a very deep and continuing involvement with the association, the Regional Association of Energy Engineers, and so we're delighted to have Joe here today. Joe, please do come tell us about your program.
Green button. Thank you very much, David. I'm pleased to be here to thank the Worcester Business Journal, the sponsors, commissioners, and customers. I'd like to start my presentation, do a quick historical overview, some of the major events that affect energy in the Commonwealth here, and then I'll go through the gas energy efficiency programs, giving you some tips on technology and kind of how to frame the debate. The first one is the historical overview. It's the events that we all lived through. This is the 1970s, the oil Arab embargo, or OPEC. This resulted in wage and price controls that President Nixon had to invoke with executive order. President Carter would later call this the moral equivalent of war. It did give us, this was something that happened to us. It's one of the greatest examples of market power by a cartel, both in its scope, its worldwide control of global oil supply, thereby controlling the prices, as well as the duration, 40 years. In the 80s, we had innovations in technology. The world of computers came to building automation and controls. We also saw utilities start to adopt energy efficiency programs. Joan Bach at Nice Plan was the co-author and joked, or half-joked, to say that we spend money to reduce sales. That was partially right, but what she really meant is we spend money to buy waste. And that's what the energy efficiency programs have done effectively at the margins for decades. The other one, in 1990s, we had deregulation and re-regulation. We saw electric industry restructuring, which was mentioned before. This created the market-based supply where you could buy your own commodities, gas, electricity. Now these could be bought directly. You didn't have to go through utility companies, and as well as the capacity markets. We live at the end of very constrained distribution. I'm talking nationally here. Our pipelines come up from the south. Now we're talking about bringing them in from the north. There's one in Maine. So all of these distribution, we do have access. That's good, but it's expensive and with the unattractive end of the supply chains. In 2000, some of these issues came back. We had government bailout, Enron. When I talk about government bailouts and too big to fail, I'm talking about the Enron crisis. This is where a bad actor manipulated the market, And the result of that was that the state of California ended up having to bail out the two largest electric distribution companies in the country, Southern California and Pacific Gas and Electric, much bigger than the utilities here today, but the impact was profound. And what California ended up doing was they had to bail out those utilities to make sure they didn't go into bankruptcy, too big to fail. We would hear that later on in the same decade. And now I'm glad to choose this venue to declare the experiment in energy efficiency is over. Massachusetts has now achieved where the sustainable economy includes energy efficiency. We get it. And now we're becoming more of a masters of our own fate. The state of the state, I don't know, I made these up. Must have been late, so I was having a little bit of fun. So I kind of extended this. Is Massachusetts competitive in the global economy? I think so, just on the basis of the fact that there's few places that want to compete with Massachusetts, whether it's healthcare, music, sports, energy efficiency. I could go on. The strategic energy plan, I have to give a lot of the credit to the two commissioners here, but the people in this room and the utilities for taking leadership roles, as is our heritage, by building a culture of innovation and initiative so that we do have the plans that we have today. Then I was having a little bit of fun with it. Plays well with others. No, we don't play well with others. We want to lead. We want to boss everybody around. At least I like to. The SWOT analysis is kind of, what is a management tool that people look at. What are the strengths? There are almost too many to list. We have a trained workforce, lots of innovation. We have Phoenix fume hood controls developed here in the Commonwealth. Companies like Tecogen providing combined heat and power. These are real manufacturers that that anticipated the innovation economy and are succeeding in it. Weaknesses, some of them have been mentioned. We have limited natural resources. We have abundant wind, but siting it is an issue. And we also have, as I mentioned earlier, we're kind of at the wrong end of these supply chains. We're working to combat those as a region, but there's a lot of involvement and a lot of stakeholders from the governors right on down to consumers. Opportunities and threats. Opportunities is our state policies for energy are well aligned with the national policies, all of the above. And these policies administered by the investor-owned utilities, or we call them program administrators. These are the companies that are your distribution companies, gas and electric. You see National Grid and NSTAR there, two companies represented on this panel. But the other investor-owned utilities, they run the programs. They're called program administrators. That leads, so I just wanted to pause. That historical perspective was to indicate, one of the observations I made was how voter anxiety over pocketbook issues allows governments to act and act fast. We saw that with the ARA legislation with President Obama. We saw that in the 70s with President Nixon doing wage and price controls, something that just be unheard of today. This is the service area. Now I'd like to transition to introduce some of the programs that NSTAR Gas offers here in the greater Worcester area. So I wanted to point out this is the service area for NSTAR. It's the orange area is the greater Worcester area. That's NSTAR Gas. The other areas are too difficult to decipher on this map, but basically the polka dotted ones are the mutual gas service area, and the blue is the electric area, electric only. This is the area that my dedicated gas team serves. I'm a program manager with NSTAR. We deliver energy efficiency services and incentives to these communities. There's a huge asset that we have, and that's National Grid. All of these communities, NSTAR is the gas company, National Grid is the electric company, all of them. We collaborate and cooperate often to meet your needs. Our objective with NSTAR Gas is to buy your energy waste, specifically wasted natural gas. We want you to continue to use gas for things you need it for, hot water, heating, all those productive things that you do, make product. Our budget is $5 million, and our location is these cities and towns. If you'd like a service area map, I can give you that later. If you're not sure if you're in this area, you can see me later. We do also, as I mentioned, we work with National Grid. There are also initiatives they have. There's a synergy program that's working here in Worcester colleges that's been very effective. We collaborate with those. And we also have our own cohorts, which we work, NSTAR works with, particularly with the university area, to try to recruit and motivate customers to participate in the programs. Now I'd like to switch to some of the technologies that we see are most popular. And some of these are things you've heard about. They're kind of in a progression of least cost-effective to the most cost-effective. So they get better as I go down the list. But I still think they're important parts because of their scale. These are impactful technologies. When they go in, they have a big effect. And there's a lot of people who have the opportunity for these. And if I don't spend that $5 million every year on energy efficiency, my annual review is not going to look very good, so I'd like you to help me out, please. High-efficiency laundries. This is best when replacing equipment. We get calls from customers, oh, we have $6,000 to fix our big commercial laundry. We're a long-term care nursing center or a hospital, something like that. The time to consider these technologies, high G-force dryers, cold temperature washing machines, all new technologies, but with the controls and the electronics to know that you're still getting better product. But the time to look at these usually is when when you're replacing equipment. Heat recovery. Eliminate dumping water. If you see hot water going down to the drain, you see steam leaking out, these are indications that your systems aren't running as well as they might be. We have technical services and specialists who can come in and help identify what to do. Usually when spending money on finding the solution is often far cheaper than actually doing it. It's kind of like going for your annual health checkup. If you're really, or taking your car to a diagnostic. Once you know what's wrong, fixing it usually isn't too expensive. HVAC controls. This is as simple as night setback thermostats, which you have, but they're also available in the building-wide solution, energy management systems. And demand control ventilation, where we're not just controlling, excuse me, we're not just controlling the temperatures, but we're also controlling the amount of ventilation air. Also giving you the confidence that you know you're having enough ventilation air going through. Industrial ventilation for woodworkers, laboratory fume hoods. We do a lot of work with R&D, and kitchen exhaust fans. This is just control systems that use less ventilation so you're not heating and cooling Greater Shrewsbury. Boiler controls. Boilers are built to serve what? The coldest day, 0 degrees. By definition, all of our boilers and furnaces are oversized. The one in your house is oversized. Why? Because it's got to operate at the coldest day. 99% of the time, there is really much less need, and historically, a lot of equipment hasn't had what we call good turn-down efficiency. In other words, it'll go like your vehicle. Your vehicle will go slower, and actually your vehicle turns down very well. You use less gasoline. But boilers and other heating systems are not often like that. So having controls that are available today, modern state-of-the-art controls, and both in the design when you buy them or as an aftermarket product, such as outdoor reset and heat timers. These are some of the phrases that you'll hear. Pipe insulation, one of the most cost-effective measures that we can implement. When you go into a chiller plant, it's not cold. The pipes are all insulated. What do I have when you go into a steam plant? It's hot. Why is it hot? Well, the pipes aren't insulated. They shouldn't be hot. If your boiler rooms are hot, you've probably got an opportunity for pipe insulation. And steam traps, probably the most, if you've got a steam system, we have a real appetite. Obviously, these are big users of electricity. There's natural gas. They're the biggest users, so we really want to target steam systems. If we haven't talked to you about more efficiency, the options that you have to improve efficiency in your steam plant, please talk to us. I want to do one case study. The boiler and air conditioning controls, that was simply the air handler system didn't talk to the boiler. So when it was cold at night, the air handler would start. It just didn't tell the boiler to start, so that didn't work. Well, what did they do? Well, they just left the boiler running all the time. That's inefficient. We fixed that with controls. This container manufacturer was very innovative and kind of the classic case of a large industrial customer doing exactly what we want to do. They came to us and said, we're buying this $1 million machine. Actually, this was a collaboration from our friends over at National Grid, who said, Sean McGlowan, I don't know if he's in the room, what's your option? What do you mean, what's our option? We're buying the machine. No, do you have an energy efficient option? I don't know, we'll ask. Call the manufacturer, can we get the energy efficiency option? Well, we have one, but we only sell it in Europe and Canada. We've never sold one in the United States before. Oh, really? Well, what does it cost? Well, I work for the utility company. I don't really, don't ask them what it costs. Ask them, how much it's going to cost them after the incentives. It was $300,000 cost. And we knew it was going to say, we did some calculations, we felt it was going to save about $88,000 a year. Pretty good deal, 4 or 5 year payback, really wasn't enough to do it. But they had already bought the $1 million machine. It had already been shipped, but they could get the other stuff shipped by the end of the year if we would go ahead and help with the incentives. So in record time, turned around an application process in about 3 weeks, working with our colleagues at National Grid, offered them initially $100,000, and that wasn't quite enough to do it. And they came back and said, well, how much, sounds like a car salesman. How much do you want to pay? Well, how much do you want to spend? Well, the strike price was about $140,000. We got to $150,000, that was good enough. We split it down the middle. They did the project. This was a proof of concept. They bought the project at the end of 2013. Now they're talking about buying another one. Thank you. So I'd like to close by issuing the challenge. And the challenge is, if you don't have an energy plan, let's go ahead and make it. Gather your energy bills. Think about what would you pay today to do a project that's going to save you 10%. Rally, you're going to have to think that through. If your energy bill is, in my house, our energy bill is $350 a month. That's $4,000 a year. What would I pay to save 10%? Well, I'd pay $400. That's 10%. Would you pay $400 to save $400 in 1 year? Yeah, I would. Would I pay $1,000? Maybe. Would I pay $10,000? Probably not. But this is the way to communicate with management, to think about how they can, and people who have to approve budgets, this is the way to do it. So your options are 3. You can do nothing. You continue to pay an opportunity cost. You still have the waste. What you're sustaining is waste. You don't want to do that. The other option is create an energy plan, measurable goal with budgets and people. You're going to have to staff this. It takes time. Like any corporate or institutional asset, you need to manage it to get results. If you don't have money and time and project management, consider an energy services company. They can do the design, they can come up with the solution, they can fund it, and they can handle all the utility incentives, but they will want to share in the savings. Maybe no upfront cost to you, however, it will allow you to share in the savings. With that, I thank you for your time and your patience, and if you have any questions, I return it to David. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you. I think, Peter, we have a couple of minutes for questions, so I want to give you an opportunity. Let's get started right here. Go ahead.
Tim, could you talk a little bit about the net metering credit price between 17 cents range right now, as I understand it, how that might change or how you think it will change in the future, next 5, 10 years?
Can't really talk about 5 or 10 years, but I can say come November 1st, it's going to go up a lot. And the reason for it is because the biggest chunk of it is the standard offer price. So when I talk about 15 to 17 cents, that's the average rate a small commercial, industrial, or residential customer pays. And so approximately what they pay is what they get back for that value. When you get to the medium and large C&I customers, because it's energy-only components, the credit's really only about 11 or 12 cents a kilowatt hour because there's a lot of the distribution charges are actually demand-based and not energy-based. We do know that when basic service goes up November 1st, that 8-cent component that's standard offer today in that calculation will go to 16 cents. And so over the winter, folks are going to actually, get a windfall for net metering value. But it really does track the market price of energy is what it's really doing. I mean, because that's the key piece. The other components, the delivery components are fairly, they're not fixed because obviously every once in a while we need a rate case for our system. The grid modernization orders coming around, for example, will need significant investment on the existing Princeton distribution system. So that delivery piece on the distribution will go up a little bit here. But in order to kind of gauge what it is, and again, if we all look at a crystal ball about energy prices, we may not be in this room, for example, but it's going to be really gauging off of what the energy prices are over time. There's really no way to predict a 5 or 10 year price on that.
Yes, well, actually, you've had one, so let's go just to the back, if you don't mind. I'll get others in. Please, speak loudly.
Yes, another question for Tim. The incentives are great, promoting distributed generation. Combined heat and power specifically would do well in downtown areas to the extent there's building heat flows, but the downtown networks can be prohibitive for actual interconnection. I'm just wondering to what extent are the utilities looking to help study or resolve some of the actual technical issues of connecting to the downtown networks?
That's a good question. I mean, because that's exactly one of the challenges we have right here in downtown Worcester, for example, in downtown Boston, downtown Albany, and areas like that, where the systems are designed only for the flow into the building. If the power flows out, the system thinks there's a fault and it opens up breakers, and then the power goes out. So you can't have reverse power flow in the network. There are, a lot of the interconnection standards we use and they use throughout the country are actually based on some IEEE standards, 1547. So there is a working group, 1547.8, that's been, or 7, that's been running for a while now to kind of figure out what do we need to do in order to interconnect successfully on downtown networks. And it always usually requires some sort of minimal power flow into the building from the system, and then some sort of scheme to trip the DG if it starts to detect potentially reverse power flow. Now, what does that really mean on a minute-by-minute basis? Net metering is impossible on a downtown network because you can't ever actually spin your meter backwards. That's the real challenge. But you can operate systems down to some certain minimum load criteria. The challenge is that if somehow you were to kick a little power out, the breaker would open up and you would go in the in the black. So it is a very serious consideration that we have to think. So there's already an allowance for fairly small inverter-based systems to interconnect to networks, but the larger systems are much harder. People always look at Con Ed in New York City, but their networks are thousands of times literally bigger than the ones we have in Worcester and even in Boston for NSTAR Electric. So they've got 1,000 megawatt network systems where ours are 500 kilowatt systems in certain areas of our downtown areas. So significant challenge, and there's a lot of work going on around it. So hopefully in a couple of years here, we'll get a little better understanding of the control strategy needed to actually interconnect successfully to our networks.
Okay, well, we're at our time limit, unfortunately, but please join me in thanking the panelists.
It is my pleasure to be introducing Marcy Reed, who's the president of National Grid in Massachusetts. Marcy Reed's responsibilities at National Grid include the financial, operational, and customer service performance of their business in the state of Massachusetts. In addition, she manages the relationships with regulators, government officials, and the communities the company serves. Marcy joined National Grid over 25 years ago and has held various positions in finance, merger integration, and corporate affairs. She also spent 3 years, although I didn't notice an accent, living in London as the National Grid head of investor relations. Right, she's got the Queen's wave down. Perfect. Marcy sits on the boards of several organizations: the New England Council, the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, the Partnership, the Massachusetts Business Roundtable, the Federal Reserve Bank Advisory Council, and City Year, among others. She is the global executive sponsor for National Grid's Women in Networks Employee Affinity Group, and that's a lot of responsibility. She must be spending a lot of time in her car. So, anyways, she's a graduate of Dartmouth College with a master's degree from Northeastern University. Please welcome National Grid's Massachusetts president, Marcy Reed.
Okay. So I have to violate rule number 1, which is don't wear your glasses in public. But I'm wearing, so that I can see what I'm about to say to you, I thought I would do that. Thank you, Peter. I remember when I started at National Grid about, well, it was 26 years ago, 1988, when it was called New England Electric System or Mass Electric. The hot topic that year was around the world was the Hubble Space Telescope that was put into operation, and all of us became intrigued with the stealth bomber. Then in the 90s, it was the web and mass production of PCs, and by the end of that century, almost 300 million of us were using the internet regularly. We then all survived Y2K, thought we wouldn't, but we did, and new words entered our vocabulary: Facebook, Xbox, iPhone, and YouTube. And we learned that our thumbs were our most important appendage. But now our time has come. In the last couple years, the hot topic has been, you guessed it, energy. Gone are the days when no one really spent too much time thinking about, worrying about, planning for, or innovating about the revolution we are now seeing in the energy world. And that's because energy has never been a more important role in how we live our lives. So let's take a few minutes to talk about the transformational changes I see going on around us, and I know you do too. To help frame the conversation, I'm going to organize it into 4 parts: society, policy, infrastructure, and jobs. First, let's take a look at how society has changed the energy industry. It was just 3 short years ago that 2 massive storms hit the East Coast: Hurricane Irene and the October snowstorm. Millions of customers lost their power in those storms from the southeast in the U.S. all the way up through New England. But neither event was like any other prior storm we had had. Since it had been years since we'd had a big storm, we in the utility space saw something we'd never seen before. Customers had almost zero tolerance for an outage that extended past a couple days. This isn't because we've become more entitled as a society, but because we live our lives plugged in. So much of what we do, whether it's using our charged cell phone or doing homework on laptops, relies on electricity being available at the plug, at the outlet. And if it's not, we don't display much patience for a grid that's not functioning. This is one of the reasons why we are so excited about our Smart Grid pilot. Many of you know it here as our Smart Energy Solutions program. It's right here in Worcester. And I just want to give a shout out to Carlos Noel. I know you're out there somewhere, but all I see are lights. Carlos, thank you for talking about that earlier today. And more broadly, we're looking forward to presenting plans to the state regulator next summer to modernize the grid across the 172 towns that we serve electrically here in Massachusetts. A smarter grid will enable us to respond more quickly and effectively to outages such as those we saw in Irene and October. And it will empower our customers, really more importantly, not only with information, but also through new technologies and automation such as advanced thermostats and devices to be more efficient and effective with how they use their energy. They'll be able to make decisions they simply are not able to with today's technology. All this is happening because society is moving faster and faster with more and more data. The nation's current grid simply is running way behind the times. Second, let's consider some of the big changes we've seen in the policy arena. And I confess to not having been here for Secretary Bartlett's comments, but I've heard her speak about policy, and she will probably mirror much of what I am thinking about and saying today. More and more, public officials, and really all of us, are increasingly concerned about the environment. Climate change is real, and policies are demanding us to mitigate it and adapt to it. Take, for example, Governor Patrick's goal of having 1,600 megawatts of solar installed by 2020. By the end of this year, we'll be at 600 megawatts, well on our way as a state to beating that goal. In fact, the policies that drive this have been so successful that Massachusetts ranks 5th in the U.S. in installed solar capacity. It's policy and subsidies that got us here, not necessarily the amount of sun we enjoy day to day. In fact, this year we will have connected more than 300 megawatts of customer-owned renewables, and solar is the vast majority. With all this happening, National Grid engineers are working overtime to design connections to a grid that was built to accept one-way power flows. And now it has to work in both directions. It's not easy, and it's a big change. And Tim Rowan, who I can see through the light, walk to the light, spoke about this earlier, and I'm ever thankful for Tim's contributions to our team. Turning to my third point, there are other environmental considerations and policies that are transforming the energy industry and what our infrastructure looks like. For almost 30 years, National Grid has been a leader in energy efficiency programs. I'm proud of that. I remember working in Westboro in the basement when they were embryonic and now are really quite mature, considered some of the best around the nation. Everyone knows that the cheapest kilowatt hour you can buy is the one you don't use. But even doubling or tripling the take-up of energy efficiency won't get us where we need to be to fully offset the environmental impacts of traditional electricity generation. We need to turn to large-scale wind and other remote renewables. To take full advantage of these types of zero-carbon-emitting energy sources, we'll need to expand our transmission grid, period. This is easier said than done. Building a large terrestrial wind farm in, say, northern Maine is not difficult. Accessing Canadian hydro isn't hard either. But getting the power from there to here presents quite a challenge. Not everyone is signing up for a new transmission tower in their backyard. Thankfully, some of the planned routes already have existing rights-of-way, and the siting process might be a tad easier. But even when the siting is successful, people don't get excited about paying for that new transmission line. And then there's the massive convergence of electricity and natural gas to talk about. With the discovery a few short years ago of all that shale gas under the Marcellus Shale region, we've all seen prices of natural gas plummet. We really noticed the impact about 3 years ago when thousands of households, literally thousands, who were heating with fuel oil began calling us to switch their homes to natural gas. We've doubled the number of conversions we do on an annual basis, and there is no end in sight. But it's not all rosy when it comes to natural gas. All of you here know that last month, National Grid announced that the price of the winter electricity supply that we procure on your behalf is skyrocketing. So what does that have to do with the abundance of or price of natural gas? Actually, everything. Because natural gas is a cleaner fuel than oil and coal, many electricity generating plants in New England converted to natural gas, just like those thousands of homes I mentioned. Sitting here today, about half of the electricity generated in Massachusetts comes from natural gas. That's good for the environment. But guess what? The basic concept of supply and demand is now wreaking havoc in the market. While many plants and homes were converting to gas, the supply of it into the region was not moving at all. Now we're faced with a lesson in Economics 101. High demand and low supply equals high price. The solution is to bring more gas via a pipeline into the region. All that gas is sitting there in the Marcellus Shale, but we don't have access to it. The rest of the country is benefiting from it, but we are literally at the end of the pipeline, and our appetite is outpacing our supply. And remember what I said about those electric transmission lines coming down from the north that might access renewables like wind or hydro? The same challenge applies. People aren't jumping up and down, I know they should, to pay for a new pipeline running through their backyard. Well, you've all figured out by now that we have a clear problem to solve. Either we decide as a nation and a region to invest in large-scale infrastructure projects like long-haul transmission and gas pipelines to plentiful sources, or we continue to see tight supplies and the prices that come with it. It is a choice. And this is what I meant when I started talking about this being the era of energy. It's our turn. We are at a critical juncture where we need to be making some very big decisions, not about just today, but for the future generations. To some of you, this might seem a daunting task. For me, I find it exciting and fascinating all at once. I literally jump out of bed every morning. You can ask my husband, I do. To be involved in decisions that will have profound impact on society makes our job at National Grid and across the sector very satisfying. And speaking of jobs at National Grid brings me to my fourth and final point. Despite the many changes and challenges occurring in the energy industry, we are not seeing a huge influx of engineers and folks with the skills necessary to overcome the challenges I've set forth here today. The number of college students majoring in engineering is way down, and among them, only 13% are girls. To tackle the shortage of and lacking diversity in the incoming ranks, I am actually quite proud of the partnerships we have forged with WPI and other four-year engineering schools. But we also see a shortage of people entering the trades. Our line workers and gas mechanics typically come to us with a vocational degree or some community college courses. And we're seeing the numbers drop here too. To break through this challenge, I'm proud of our partnership with both Worcester Tech and Quincy Community College. These partnerships help us plug the gap today, but the problem really is longer term. We need to get young people interested in the technical fields so that they can join us at National Grid and work on the many challenges I spoke about today. Plus, I do not want to work until I'm 82. The industry is getting more complex, not less. This is indeed the time for energy. Opportunities like grid modernization, renewable energy development and connection, infrastructure investment, policy development, and a much-needed overhaul to the regulatory compact between utilities and their customers make this an industry ready for exciting change and innovation. We can get this right. We need to start looking at energy and how we get it and use it differently than we ever have. At National Grid, we have a strategy we refer to as Connect 21. It talks about the role of the utility of the future and how we should provide the safe, reliable, and resilient energy backbone to our customers, and how we can build 21st century cleaner and smarter gas and electric networks on which our 21st century digital economy can thrive. It contemplates others, whether they're innovative entrepreneurs who I met out in the hallway or thoughtful policymakers. It contemplates them using our network as a playground to deliver tools and data to customers. We may not have it exactly right when we look into our crystal ball, but I am willing to bet that we have it more right than wrong. Together, we can bring technological advances to bear, just like we've seen with space in the 80s, computers and telephony in the 90s, and smartphones and mobile technology in the 2000s. They all had their turn, so now it's our turn. I would now like to turn to a presentation of an award to the City of Worcester. Just about 3 years ago, the Green Today, Growth Tomorrow Summit was held in this very building. In fact, I think if we take the walls down, it was in this very room. Yes, Rita? Yes, bobbing her head. Thank you. The summit brought together 300 stakeholders to identify initiatives and creative ways to engage partners on the topic of sustainability in the greater Worcester community. A Green to Growth Council was formed to carry out the initiatives that evolved from that summit. One of the initiatives, which is now a reality, is the Worcester Sustainability Hub, located at 912 Main Street over by Clark. This location is open to all members of the public to learn from our WPI and Clark student ambassadors about energy conservation, renewable sources of electricity, environmental sustainability, and National Grid's Smart Energy Solutions program. The Green to Growth Council is present here today, out in the hallway, to recognize a community partner who has epitomized the qualities of sustainability, energy conservation, use of renewable sources of energy, and creative programs to engage the Worcester community. The Council today recognizes the City of Worcester for its aggressive yet well-balanced approach to reducing energy consumption by 20% over the next 5 years. The City has been an active partner with the Green to Growth Council and through its energy services contract with Honeywell. The City has partnered with National Grid and Clark University to help make the Sustainability Hub a reality. They've also partnered with National Grid on both residential and small business energy efficiency and sustainability assessments. The city is in the process of installing 10 solar arrays on roofs of city schools. It's replaced boilers at 6 schools and at City Hall, and has completed building envelope projects at 7 schools. And this work that I mentioned is only a fraction, really, of everything that they've been doing in energy efficiency and with renewable energy. So before I ask City Manager Augustus to come up and accept this award, we'd like to play a short video to celebrate Worcester's commitment to building a green energy future. This video was created by Energy Star and helped put Worcester in the national spotlight. Roll the tape.
Welcome everybody to this year's annual World Smile Day celebration, occurring right here in downtown Worcester and around the globe at this point.
We're partnering with the City of Worcester and National Grid to have a big celebration that celebrates not only energy efficiency but also World Smile Day.
People who are reading, people who are smiling, they're sending out positive energy.
We have so many partners that are energizing this community.
We're actually going to be inviting kids to come through the Sustainability Hub to learn about saving energy, learn about Energy Star, and learn about how that can put a smile on your face.
We're spreading positive energy by teaching our children to read.
We're making a difference by bringing smiles to the world.
Teaching energy efficiency to children means they'll bring it home to their family.
Energy Star makes the world a better place for kids.
By saving energy, we're helping to reduce our negative impact on the world.
Climate change means we all have to be a little bit smarter about the way we use our energy.
Energy Star has saved American families over $300 billion on their utility bills.
By conserving our energy, we are helping save resources for future generations.
Saving energy makes the world a better place.
I love that. It's a great video. So on behalf of National Grid, I am proud to present this award to the City of Worcester and City Manager Ed Augustus, along with John Odell, Director of Energy and Assets, for their exemplary efforts in creating a model for sustainability, energy conservation, and the use of renewable energy resources within the City of Worcester. Help me congratulate them.
Very nice.
Close. Smile, smile.
Go on the other side if you want. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go. Want to do another one right here? Nice smile? That's great, thank you.
You Photoshop that later. You want to say something?
Thank you.
Okay.
How's that? Thank you.
So I'm not going to step up to the mic again. I've got about 3 more minutes of things to say. Thank you, Marcy, so much for sharing your comments. That was great. Think back. If that was Mike O'Brien, we'd be here till 1 o'clock. You know, sometimes brevity is the greatest wisdom, isn't it? So anyways, a terrific day. I'd like to thank Marcy. I'd like to thank National Grid, all the folks who spoke here and in the other rooms today for just a terrific job and a great sort of sharing of ideas. And frankly, we got a ton of knowledge in the audience and a lot of experts. So really, it was a two-way conversation in a lot of the rooms, and it was terrific. So thank you all for coming. Let's give everyone a hand. Sponsors, but I'm down on the floor here because I've got this glass jar with the business cards, and we're going to draw for people who are in the audience 2 certificates to Cyprian Keys, which was that foursome, and 2 $100 gift certificates. I think it was the Niche Hospitality Group. So I'm going to ask Marcy to draw the first card. Good job. Peter Stanton. No, I'm sorry.
of you are golfing or not. So find a friend at the table who would enjoy going out there with you. Let's see. So far, we're 2 for 2 for folks in the rooms. And this is from Good Energy, Stefano Loretto. All right. Wow, 7 handicaps. Spending too much time on the course. Okay. Next. Andrew, help me. I just had to get consulted. Jamie Dodd. Jamie Dodd in the room. All right, so I would wrap up comments and thank not only everyone who helped out as a panelist and in the audience, but also all of our sponsors. And I don't need to, I'll go right with the visuals. National Grid, obviously, our long-term partner. Select, being our corporate sponsors, supporting sponsors. Conover and Gould, the Mass Clean Energy Center, and World Energy. And also, these are our exhibitors who are all out there. And I think I've seen some terrific conversations, lots of great services to offer us. And a special thank you to Curry Printing, DCU Center, Elevation Exhibits, Mark Serra Productions, Revelation Productions. By the way, have you ever seen a video when you go hit the video that it actually comes on? So many events I've been at, it takes like 30 seconds and someone's fumbling around. So that's the folks at Revelation Productions kind of making that happen and giving us a very crisp presentation. Thank you. And Ron Brulé Photography. Thank you, Ron. Everyone smiles in Ron Brulé photographs. So that's it for the formal program. I believe, Chris, there's a buffet lunch that's served out there. Spend some quality time together, quality time with exhibitors. Bring a plate back in here, nibble, whatever you'd like. Thank you all for coming, and enjoy the rest of the day. We've got everyone still out there in the hallway. So there's networking time.